The baseball excitement level has risen here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as playoff and World Series tickets went on sale this morning at the stadium. Last night, Pittsburgh won another game, 1-0 over the Cardinals. A complete game victory for Zane Smith. And now the clinching number for the Pirates is only 9. And CBS Sports presents Major League Baseball. It has turned out to be a lovely afternoon here in Pittsburgh as the first-place Pirates take on the last-place Cardinals. Checking the standings this morning, Boston and Toronto are flat even, and Toronto will play 3 at Boston next weekend. Oakland in charge in the American League West. In the East, it's Pittsburgh by 3.5 over New York. Montreal lost last night. They're 5.5 out. The Reds and the Dodgers both won last night. The difference there, 3.5 games. I'm Jack Buck with Tim McCarver. And Tim, do you think it's going to be Pittsburgh and Cincinnati?
I think it will be. I think the one thing that makes both teams prohibitive favorites are the games that they have left at home. Cincinnati plays 9 of their last 12 at home. Pittsburgh plays 8 of their last 11 at home. So not only do both teams have a 3.5 game cushion, but they're playing at home too. And
we'll watch a very good Pittsburgh club here today with a lot of interesting characters.
They're worried about their magic number now of 9, where the Mets are worried about a magic slumber. They've lost 5 in a row.
We're going to have a right-hander today for St. Louis, Ken Hill, and a rookie left-hander, Randy Tomlin, for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
CBS Sports presents Major League Baseball. Today's game is brought to you by Buick, the new symbol for quality in America. Visa, accepted at nearly 7 million places worldwide. Visa, it's everywhere you want to be. And by Bud Dry. Why ask why? Try Bud Dry for refreshment that's beyond question.
We've already had our national anthem here in the exchange of lineup cards, and the PA announcer just said, here are your first-place Pittsburgh Pirates. And they have taken the field with a 24-year-old left-hander on the mound, Randy Tomlin. He has really helped them down the stretch despite that record of 3-3. He has won some key games. He is 0-1 against St. Louis. And here's the lineup for the St. Louis Cardinals today. Probably a kid you haven't seen before. Bernard Gilkey in left field. Ozzie Smith at short. Felix Jose, formerly of Oakland, in right field. Pedro Guerrero at first. Todd Zeile at third base. Rex Hudler in center field. Tom Pagnozzi catching. Jose Oquendo at second base. And another 24-year-old pitcher, right-hander Ken Hill, will work for St. Louis.
And to find a defense backing up Tomlin, Barry Bonds, who many think, even Barry thinks he should be the Gold Glove winner in left field, and many agree. Andy Van Slyke has won 2 in center field. Bobby Bonilla, a converted right fielder. Wally Backman, the guts of this ball club, along with Van Slyke, and Jay Bell as partner at shortstop. Jose Lean with remarkable range at second base. Sid Bream, an excellent defensive first baseman. Mike LaValliere won the Gold Glove a couple of years ago. So a good defense backing up Randy Tomlin.
And Jim Leyland is the skipper of this team, and a lot of people think that he should be the manager of the year. He'll have some competition, of course. Jeff Torberg over with the White Sox, and Tom Lasorda, who, by the way, Lasorda is 63 years old today. Happy birthday to Tom. But there's no doubt that Leyland has done a wonderful job. And across the way, Joe Torre back with the Cardinals wearing number 22, and he loves this role of manager, Tim.
Took over August 3rd, came right from the broadcasting booth into the dugout. And that's not an easy task.
No. We're about to start here, and here's Bernard Gilkey. This youngster is from St. Louis, University City, played at Louisville this year. Off to a slow start with only 5 hits. He had a hand injury shortly after getting a start in St. Louis. This kid can run, and he's a good outfielder, and they expect him to improve right down the line. Here we go. He showed a bunt and took a ball from the left-hander Tomlin, who is a unique thrower, talking about the way he throws the ball.
He's very unusual in that he does not open his hip to face the batter. He throws across his body. He doesn't clear that right hip out.
He misses low and away ball, too.
That's very deceptive, especially for right-handed batters. Talking to Milt May before the game, he's the bullpen catcher. And Milt was saying, you think he's going to throw the ball about 3 feet outside, but he jerks the ball over the plate like that.
And Gilkey fouled it away. 2 balls and a strike.
Most pitchers are taught to clear their hip and to open up, allowing a freer movement in their delivery to the plate. But as you see with Tomlin, he steps almost toward first base and throws across his body.
Gilkey misses 2-2. If you were wondering why Gilkey swung on 2-0, it's because Tomlin is always around the plate. He's only walked 10 in 61 innings. Tough enough for these right-handers to hit Tomlin. Left-handers have a double tough job here. The high fly ball to Bonilla. He got a late start, but he would get it, and he does for the out. That's the way this game starts. The umpires today are Dana DeMuth behind the plate. Well, Crawford behind the plate. His dad, a long-time umpire in the National League, and Doug Harvey, the crew chief at first, Dana DeMuth at second base, and Eric Gregg, who had the plate last night, is umpiring at third. And you saw a close-up look of Jerry Crawford, and his father Shags was a fine umpire for many years. Here's Ozzie Smith with a .257 average. One of the many switch hitters in the Cardinal lineup. Strike one. One of the Cardinal players, Tom Pagnozzi, talking about Tomlin, said left-handers have no chance against him. That's 1-1. What's his pitching stuff, Tim? He doesn't throw real hard, does he?
Not a hard thrower, but flat slider, an occasional changeup. But his forte is he throws a lot of strikes. As you said, only 10 walks. Actually, you could say 10 walks and 1 intentional walk. He walked down the aisle a week ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Got married and pitched on Sunday.
Here's the ground ball to first, and Sid Bream makes the play there.
Randy marrying the former Janet Belch. He married her in Watertown, New York, and pitched the next day in Montreal. And the reason that he married, the way they met was she was a bank teller in Watertown, and Randy went to cash his first professional check at that bank. And Janet cashed it, and she'll be cashing some more Tomlin checks.
And bigger ones.
In the next 25 years or so.
That's what Janet saw. Here's a swing and a miss by Felix Jose, who's batting .250. Switch hitter. Strike two. You see that ball running from Tomlin, and he's on his way to an easy inning. Tomlin, born in Maryland, grew up in Virginia. This Jose hit a home run the other night in St. Louis that went 463 feet. He is strong. With 2 out, he takes the ball.
It was over the Stadium Club in St. Louis, wasn't it?
Went way off the foul line. Then up in Chicago, batting left-handed, he hit one over the bleachers and out into the seats, and when he connects, it goes. Ooh. 2-2, and Tomlin's probably wondering what's wrong with that one. And Felix is saying, I was lucky on that one. 2-2 with 2 out, first inning. Third baseman deep. Felix corks it to short. Jay Bell, their steady shortstop, throws him out. It's a 1-2-3 inning, and the Pirates will bat for the first time. Pittsburgh hasn't been in postseason play since 1979 when they won it all, but they're starting to get the fever over here now, leading by 3.5. They'll face Ken Hill, a hard-throwing right-hander. He can throw more than 90 miles an hour. And what are his other pitches, Tim?
Fastball is a sinker. The slider and the split finger has really made him a complete pitcher.
And here's the lineup for Pittsburgh with Wally Backman at third, Jay Bell at short, Andy Van Slyke in center, Bobby Bonilla in right, Barry Bonds in left, Sid Bream at first, Mike LaValliere catching, Jose leaned at second, and Tomlin, whom you just saw on the mound. Hill has a record of 4-4. His last 2 outings not too good, and he'll have to throw some strikes to make Backman swing the bat. Backman hitting .281. You referred to him as part of the guts of this lineup, Tim.
Yeah, his nickname is Dirt, and that's obviously an affectionate nickname. Guy likes to get his uniform dirty and does. He was the heart and soul of that Met lineup back in 1986. Remember Backman and Dykstra? Of course, you had Keith Hernandez, Gary Carter, and Darryl Strawberry then, too.
Here's ball 2 to Backman. He won't swing at a bad pitch, and whereas we have wonderful weather here in Pittsburgh, it's raining like heck in New York for those of you who are expecting to see the Yankees and the Red Sox. We'll keep you posted on the progress of the weather improvement, if any, in New York. There's ball 3. And this can get Hill in trouble. He was up with the Cardinals. He pitched fairly well. He couldn't find the strike zone. They sent him back to Louisville. He was terrific. He's back up, and he's been so-so since coming back up. And he throws a strike, according to Jerry Crawford, 3-1.
Hill 6-17 last year for the Cardinals. He led the National League in walks with a 99.
Is that good?
That's not good. Not a good category.
3-2 to Backman, who doesn't mind hitting with a 2-strike count. 3-2. Backman, Bell, and Van Slyke for the Pirates.
Backman hits the fastball the other way and pulls the breaking ball.
And he fouls a good pitch. 3-2.
Look at it. Rex Hudler in center field. He just motioned to Felix Jose to come over a little more to right center, because Hill is forced to throw fastballs. There's Rex Hudler in center. He's shaded toward left center. Backman will hit the fastball the other way 90% of the time. 3-2
pitch, and he walks. And he has stolen 6 bases, so that's no way for Hill to start. Hill's pitching stuff is very good, and when he throws strikes, he's tough to beat. But when he puts people on base, it becomes a lot easier. Do you think we'll see a bunt here?
Absolutely. 17 first-inning bunts by the Pittsburgh Pirates. To give you an idea of how many that is, the American League, all the teams in the American League have 19 first-inning sacrifice bunts. Jay Bell with 17, or Pittsburgh with 17, I should say.
Jim Leyland told us a couple of reasons for that. He said, 1, he hits into a lot of double plays, and 2, he's an excellent bunter.
36 sacrifice bunts on the year.
He didn't try to fool anybody either. Ball 1, he squared away even as Hill was getting ready to pitch. Now Pagnazzi is the catcher. And we're waiting for Pedro Guerrero, who popped a shoelace. There's Pedro. He's not hitting very well these days. He's trying to finish with a flourish. He has another year left in his Cardinal contract. Bell will be bunting again. The Cardinals have a rather, well, very inexperienced third baseman in Todd Zeile. And the bunt goes foul.
That's why I think if you're Bell, you can afford to square around that early with most third basemen. And Todd Zeile looking in at manager Joe Torre, who was a converted catcher. Joe was an excellent third baseman, the MVP in 1971 as a third baseman primarily. Todd Zeile very inexperienced at third.
And in addition to all of this, Backman is capable of stealing a base on his own. Not going, and it's low inside, ball 2. So Hill, who walked the leadoff man, is 2-1 on the number 2 hitter.
Some hitters like to square around from their batting stance, but Jay Bell indeed squaring around and squaring around early. I think if you square around that early, if you're a third baseman or first baseman, just keep right on coming. The thing you have to worry about is an experienced base runner like Backman will take off when the first baseman does. It's also a good hit and run situation right here. Got your infield moving around. See what Jim Leyland does. 2
balls and a strike. The runner goes. Slipped a little. A throw by Pagnazzi, and he is out. And a quick tag by Ozzie Smith, and a fairly good throw by Pagnazzi, and the count 2-2 on Bell. Backman slipped taking off from first base.
Well, the jump of the runner at first really is not necessary. It's not necessary to get a good jump in a hit and run situation. All a manager can do is get a good pitch for the pitcher to hit. And that ball was up and in to Jay Bell and not out over the plate and down.
Now he hits a fly ball foul into left, keeping it 2-2. And when the count went to 2-1, it was a little too inviting for Leyland, so he started the runner. And more baseballs for the plate umpire, Jerry Crawford. Two and 2 to Bell. He's batting .254. Has hit a half dozen home runs. In the first inning, no score. 3-2. hard as Hill throws, he still has to keep his pitches down or they hit him hard. He got that one down and Bell hit it foul. Fair-sized crowd on this Saturday afternoon. They've had a pretty good season here. They'll end up drawing 2,400,000. They don't pack them in like some of the other cities. Tim, it's kind of like Pittsburgh against the world. They don't have much support outside of this particular area. And he walks Bell.
Pittsburgh will go over their all-time attendance figure. Moving into this stadium back in 1970. And they set a record 2 years ago, 1,866,000. They're right at 1,000,008 right now. It's a tribute to the area.
Yeah, even when they had Willie Stargell and Dave Parker and the others, they didn't draw an awful lot of people. Here's Van Slyke, one of the 3 very good Pirate outfielders.
And a guy who could really give Hill some trouble. Hill's got to keep the ball down to be effective, and Van Slyke a dead low ball hitter.
And
dead lead, too.
And a former Cardinal, as most everybody knows. Ball 1 is low, and Hill operating behind on the count. Here comes the pitching coach. Hill probably figured he'd be visited very shortly, and Mike Rourke comes out there to talk it over. Speaking of Mike Rourke, considering the other Cardinal coaches, they have no idea whether they'll be back next year with Joe Torre.
One of the problems for coaches when a new manager takes over in the middle of the season, he usually does not carry all of the coaches for the next year. Usually a general manager will give a manager a chance to name 1 or 2 guys with whom he is very familiar, and then the other coaches are filled in with organization men. Joe is undetermined as to whether to keep the Cardinal coaches next year.
Runner on at first, 1 out, and a ball 1 count to Van Slyke. Van Slyke was involved in the Tony Pena trade, which helped the Cardinals win a pennant. Pena now with the Red Sox, trying to help them. That's a strike, 1-1. One on, 1 out. The Cardinals went down in order in their first inning. Hill can find a groove and be a terrific pitcher. He hasn't found it yet. Low and away, ball 2. Third base coach is Gene Lamont for the Pirates. He hit a home run his first time at bat in the big leagues. And Tommy Sant is coaching at first, and he is also the infield coach for Jim Leyland. He's helped Jay Bell considerably at short. Let's see if they start the runner again. 2-1 to Van Slyke. Runner not going. Fly ball into deep left. Gilkey's there. 2 out. The runner back to first with 2 men out. And here comes one of the big favorites here with the Pirates, Bobby Bonilla. And why wouldn't he be a favorite? Some football stories will continue to keep you up to date. And we have some college football when this baseball game is over. BYU, San Diego State, or Alabama, Georgia. All 1 to Bonilla. Behind on the count again is Ken Hill. This is a big sports day on CBS. Raining in New York, where the Red Sox want to play. Runner at first, 2 gone. Ball 2. It's been a long time since Bonilla has hit a home run, but he has 31. He's a switch hitter. Hitting room through the right side as Guerrero holds against Bell. In the dirt, wild pitch. It's a 5th wild pitch by Ken Hill, and the runner down to second with 2 out. 3-0 the count.
I would imagine Bonilla will be hitting here. It's interesting. Ken Hill's breaking ball is a slider. You rarely see a sinker ball pitcher throwing a curve ball. That's why you hear when guys talk about a sinker baller, they call it sinker slider. You rarely hear sinker curveball. And the reason for that, in order to throw the sinker, you have to drop down. And very few good curveballs are thrown from a 3/4 position.
Let's see if Bonilla is swinging on 3-0. Now he walks. That's the 3rd walk in the 1st inning by Ken Hill. And who do they have coming up? Barry Bonds. There's no one the Pirates would rather have at the plate at this moment.
A lot of discussion as to whether Bonds or Bonilla should be the MVP. Of course, Darryl Strawberry in the running for most valuable player. Between Bonds and Bonilla, they have 63 home runs, 223 runs batted in, as you see, and they've also scored 208 runs. Man.
Left-handed batter all the way. Bonds 2 on, 2 out. That one missed. Ball 1. And of course, Sandberg has to be mentioned in that MVP story.
37 home runs. Chance to become the first second baseman to lead the National League in home runs since Rogers Hornsby back in 1925.
That's a strike to Bonds. 1-1. Bonds had a big evening here last night. He scored the winning run. He swiped his 50th base of the year. And he has been great with men on base. Ball 2. Every hitter has been ahead on the count in this Pirate first. Jay Bell with a walk and a wild pitch is down at second, and also having walked Bonilla at first. With 2 out. Tough first inning for Hill, but no score. And a foul makes it 2-2. Even with these walks, don't get the idea that Hill can't get people out. There's Leland hoping to get this first inning lead. And Joe Torre across the way. He's really enjoying his new role despite the fact his club is in last place. 2 on, 2 out, 2 balls, 2 strikes. Pickoff play, but no throw back to second. Two pitch. 3-2. Now the runners will go. What a nasty first inning for this Cardinal pitcher.
Fastball tailing away from Barry Bonds. You have to throw him a pitch here. That is unpredictable. I think they'll go with the breaking ball here.
Another left-handed batter will be up next. 3-2. The runners take off. And a foul. We'll do it again. There's one thing about this Pirate lineup. They just keep coming after you with Van Slyke, Bonilla, and Bonds. And Sid Bream waits on deck. Looking at the Pirate bench, and they have a good one. They have a well-rounded team. Runners will go again. 3-2, 2 out. And another foul. One more time.
Hill challenging Bonds, going with 2 fastballs. Both balls up and away. Tell you, he can flat overpower you. He started 12 games in Louisville, the AAA affiliate of the Cardinals. He struck out 10 or more 6 of those 12 games.
You're right. He can challenge you and get away with it. On the other hand, Bonds has hit 32 home runs. No hits in this inning. 3 walks. 2 on, 2 out. The runner's going. Ball 4. Bases are loaded. That's the 4th walk. And it would be depressing for Pittsburgh not to get anything out of this first inning. They lost a runner stealing earlier. And coming to the plate is one of the most underrated players on this Pittsburgh squad.
Yeah, 61 RBIs. That is a key. Now here he's batting behind Bonilla and Bonds. They've driven in 223. Usually there aren't many men on base for Sid Bream. He won last night's ball game. Omar Olivares is warming now, but Bream won last night's ball game with a double when Zane Smith shut out the Cardinals.
Though Torre's not going to go very far with Ken Hill, who has walked 4 in this first inning. Still there's no score. Bell is the lead runner at third. Bonilla at second. And Bonds just just got the walk to load him up. That's low. Every hitter's been ahead on the count. This batter, Bream, has some opposite field power, so they have to play him straight away. That's a strike. Jade Bell is the runner at third. Bobby Mooney at second. Barry Bonds, one of their fastest runners, at first, and the batter is Sid Bream. 1-1, 2 out. 2-1.
Wow.
Already 33 pitches in the first inning. Still, there's no score. 2-1 to Bream. 3-1. He's already walked 4. Is he going to walk in another? Three and one, base hit and loaded. Ball 4. Run batted in for Bream. 1-0 Pittsburgh. And 5 walks by Ken Hill. Isn't that something?
I tell you, I don't think I've ever seen 5 walks in the first inning.
Joe Torre's going to go a little further with him. Pittsburgh hasn't hit the ball yet. They've lost a runner stealing. They've scored a run and have the bases loaded. And Mike LaValliere, a former Cardinal, is up there. And he has a good batting eye. Let's see what he does.
Let's go, Spanky. Pick him up.
That's ball 1. Sometimes a pitcher's pitches will run so much that he just can't throw a strike. I don't know if that's the case here. He's been all over the place. Up and down, in and out. There's a strike. 5 walks and a wild pitch in this inning.
You're also so conscious of throwing balls that when you do throw a strike, it's a strike with not a lot on it. You take something off of it, and that's the danger in being wild.
LaValliere takes ball 2. The National League record for walks in an inning is 7. That was done in 1902. Robert Ewing of Cincinnati. That was in the 4th inning in his first major league game. Hill's a rather experienced pitcher. You wouldn't expect this. 2-1 to LaValliere. He'll be looking for something to rip. And he missed it 2-2, and that might have been ball 3.
That pitch, I think, sinking out of the strike zone. Yep, it was ball 3.
He really helped him out. Bases loaded, 2 out, 2-2 on the batter. LaValliere hits it to second, and the inning's over. Pittsburgh, 1 run, no hits, 3 left, 1 inning. Pirates on top, 1-0. Pirates on top, 1-0 after 1. The NFL on CBS tomorrow begins at 12:30 Eastern with the NFL Today. They'll have a report on rumors that Steve Walsh, the quarterback with Dallas, might be traded to New Orleans. Leslie Vissard takes a look at the Eagles, who are 0-2. The NFL Today at 12:30 Eastern tomorrow, and then some outstanding games, including the Vikings at Chicago. Dallas trying to beat Washington. And here is Guerrero leading off. And that other game on CBS, Atlanta, will see if they can handle San Francisco.
Philadelphia Eagles have Keith Jackson signed and in fold, trying to get some points on the board for Randall Cunningham.
Guerrero way out in front. That's strike 2. Well, we just watched Ken Hill walk 5. Now we're looking at a Pirate pitcher, Randy Tomlin, who seldom walks any. He set the Cardinals down in order in the first. Guerrero has been sitting on 12 home runs for a long time. And he's in a slump. Isn't it? First strikeout for Tomlin.
That's Mike Rourke, the pitching coach, talking to Ken Hill. There's only so many things you can talk about during a game. really handicaps a pitching coach. You can't talk too much about mechanics. And he's obviously thinking about a lot of things, walking 5 in the first inning.
And a strike call to Todd Zeile. Zeile playing third base these days. He wasn't very happy about moving from behind the plate. He said, let him move Pagnozzi over there. Ball jumps off his bat when he hits it. He's going to be a good hitter. 1 ball, 1 strike. This is the rookie year. Some people thought he'd win Rookie of the Year honors, but he will not.
Leads the Cardinals in home runs with 14.
Tomlin missed with that one. 2 balls and a strike. Well, who will win the Rookie of the Year honors in both leagues?
Al Morris of Cincinnati, Sandy Alomar of Cleveland. Of course, Morris, that's about 250 to 300 at bats. As far as Dave Justice, I think, is a lock in the National League. Kevin Moss, a good shot in the American League. Remember, Dave Justice missed 6 weeks of the season. 26 home runs, 70 RBIs. Probably Alomar in the American League.
3-1 to Zeile and a ground ball to Bell. And 2 gone.
Say probably Alomar after Moss. I think everybody thought Alomar would be a lock, and Kevin Moss joining the Yankees and hitting more home runs than anybody and quickest at bats. Had 8 home runs in his first 78 at bats. Had 13 in his first 120 at bats.
And he's perfect for Yankee Stadium, isn't he?
Left-handed pull hitter. That short right field porch. So it's probably going to be between Moss or Alomar for the American League Rookie of the Year.
Ball 1 to Rex Hudler. Hudler getting more of a chance to play with the Cardinals than he ever had previously with Montreal. He was a 6-year minor league player, and then he got some playing time with Montreal. He has 7 home runs. The pitch is a strike, 1-1. 1-0 Pittsburgh. No hits in this game. Hudler can run. And a fly ball behind short. That ball might drop. No, Bonds caught it. Not much drops out there when Barry Bonds is patrolling left field. 6 Cardinals have been set down in order at the end of an inning and a half. 1-0 Pittsburgh.
Pirates are hot indeed, having won 3 in a row after losing 6 in a row. It's been said that speed is one of the only assets that can be used offensively and defensively, and nobody uses his speed better than Barry Bonds. That's how he caught that last ball hit by Rex Hudler. Fine play by Barry Bonds.
Jose leaned and leads it off, and a strike, and Ken Hill gets ahead of a hitter finally. He walked 5 in the first inning. This batter is a straight type hitter. They play him to the opposite field. They really pulled off of that one. Strike 2.
I think that's one thing that sets the most valuable player voting aside is the speed of Barry Bonds. 50 stolen bases. If you're considering Strawberry, Bonilla, or Sandberg, you don't look at all of those stolen bases that Bonds has. Bonds would be a Gold Glover in left field. Sandberg, arguably a Gold Glover at second base. But of course, he's not playing on a winner, and Bonds is. So I think it's going to be between Bonds or Bonilla, and I think Bonds the best choice.
That one just missed, and it's 1-2. Yeah, Jim Leland, we were chatting with him yesterday, said, if we win this thing, it'll either be Bonds or Bonilla. That's his opinion. And a foul. Stays 1-2.
They're so close in the glamour categories. Home runs, Bonilla with 31, Bonds with 32. They're 1 apart in RBIs, but that speed of Bonds, I think, will be the determining factor.
Center fielder is Hudler, and he can't get it. He missed a step coming in on that ball, and it's a base hit for Lee. I do believe he thought that ball was going to carry right to him.
He has played 7 positions for Whitey Herzog and Joe Torre this year. He says he prefers center field, but you can't tell from this play. He did have a late jump, and on the short hop, he kind of shovels it out. The first hit for the Pirates.
They got a run without the benefit of a hit in the first inning, and we'll see if, with leaned on first, the Pirate pitcher can bunt the ball. Randy Tomlin is 1 out of 31 with a bat. Leaned has stolen 7 bases. And the bunt to Hill will go to almost. He passed up the play at second. And the play went 1-4.
I think one thing that may have entered Hill's mind is if you're wild throwing home from 60 feet 6 inches, you may be wild throwing to second. So why not take the sure out? This ball punted hard back to Hill. He had an idea about going to second. I think he made the right move.
And the runner at second with 1 out. And the top of the order up.
If you can't find home plate from 60 feet away, how are you going to find second from 90 feet away?
Yeah, I thought he should have thrown to second, but that's probably in his head. Now Backman, who has driven in 26 runs this year, could add to the Pittsburgh lead. If Hill lets him hit the ball. Ball 1. St. Louis had a pitcher getting ready in the first inning. And it won't take them long to get Olivares back on his feet if Hill hits another wild streak. Ball 2.
Cardinal outfield is playing Backman straight away, and I think they should be shifted around. You play Backman like a right-handed pull hitter with not a lot of power. He hits a lot of balls the other way, especially the fastball. The only ball he's going to pull, the very slow breaking ball.
He fouls one back. This is the birthday for Wally Backman. He was born in '59. 31 years old. Happy birthday to Wally Backman. Look at Michigan and what they're doing to UCLA in the second quarter. And a good Virginia team leads in the first quarter. Pittsburgh and Syracuse slugging it out scoreless. Big sports day. And on CBS, too. Backman hits it up the middle. The runner probably will be held up. Will be. And it's first and third. Good throw by Hudler. First and third, 1 out. That's what you were talking about earlier, Tim. Trying to throw strikes and letting up to do so.
Yeah, if you're missing with your fastball out of the strike zone, then when you do throw strikes, you don't throw your quality strikes. And instead of being wild outside the strike zone, you're wild in the strike zone, even though that was a pretty good pitch that Backman hit right there. That's Backman's style, right up through the middle. And the Cardinals have to be alive for the squeeze here, the way Jay Bell can bunt.
He walked his first time. And remember, Leland said he hits into a lot of double plays, so even though we're early, he might be bunting. And a foul. One thing about the squeeze play, you're not so sure that Hill's going to throw a ball you can bunt.
Yep.
Once again in the Cardinal bullpen, Omar Olivares. First and third with 1 out. Backman has stolen a half dozen bases. There's a good strike on the corner. Strike 2. This Cardinal receiver, Tom Pagnazzi, has demanded a lot of respect this year in the National League. He's throwing as well as anybody. So they don't run wild on him. 0-2. And a foul keeps the count the same. 1-0. Pittsburgh leading. Second inning, first and third, 1 out. This Pirate club is 23 games over 500. They deserve to be where they are in first place. Up and in, 1-2. We may be seeing a lot of this team in postseason play, Tim, here on CBS.
Magic number for the Pirates to win it, 9. The Mets 3 back in the loss column. Montreal 5 back in the loss column. And this fastball just misses to Jay Bell.
First and third, 1 out. 2-2.
It's unusual in that Bell leads the Pirates in strikeouts. We mentioned how good a bunter he is, 36 sacrifices. He has 99 Ks on the year. And it's unusual because that number 2 holds a contact position.
2-2 the count. Strike, you're out on the corner. That's 100 strikeouts for Jay Bell this season, and that is the first strikeout for Ken Hill today.
And a big one, because now for the most part you need a hit to score the runner from third. Boy, a nasty slider on the outside corner. Quality pitch from Hill, and he needed it.
Oh, Joe Torre hoping that Hill can get out of this second inning. Here's Van Slyke. He flied out to left in the first. Probably won't do much running with Van Slyke up there. First and third, 2 out, and a fly ball to left again, and that's Gilkey. Pittsburgh has left 5. No runs, 2 hits, left 2, left 5. Into the third inning. Pittsburgh on top, 1-0, and the bottom 3 in the St. Louis order coming up with Tom Pagnozzi to lead it off. You always see the batters checking the bat when they step in, Tim. See if there are any chips or cracks in there.
Hairline fractures.
Tomlin, the pitcher. Ball 1 outside. Randy Tomlin's wife, Janet, in the white sweater. They are newlyweds. She is from Watertown, New York.
Randy was telling us yesterday he pitched last Sunday, the day after he was married. He had 23 members of the wedding party on his pass list. His mother, 2 aunts, and 20 relatives.
That was the reception. 1-0 Pittsburgh here at the end of 2. Pagnozzi chased a bad ball high, 1-2.
Well, it was a rude reception because Randy lost his 3rd game to the Expos last Sunday. Then Janet accompanied Randy to Chicago. So that was their honeymoon. 1 day in Montreal and 4 days in Chicago.
What a cheapskate spending that. And a strikeout for Toppin. What a cheapskate. He's spending his meal money on his honeymoon. Here's Pat O'Brien in New York, another cheapskate.
All right, Jack, thank you very much. Some of you across this country are supposed to be watching the Red Sox at New York. There's the reason why you're not watching it. It is raining. Some loyal fans out there waiting for the game to start. They're in a rain delay situation. We'll wait as well. And cheapskate? Who said that out there? Back to you, Jack.
Here's Oquendo. Jose takes one over but low. This fellow's having a remarkable season in the playing field. Jose Oquendo. In fact, he's on a record-breaking pace. What has he made, Tim? 3 errors all season?
3 errors, yeah.
Batting with 1 out. And Tomlin gets ahead on the count, 1-2. Hit it back to the pitcher. Boy, this is easy. This is 8 in a row retired by the Pittsburgh left-hander. Coming up next, CBS Sports presents some college football action. Most of you will see San Diego State taking on Heisman Trophy candidate Ty Detmer and the BYU Cougars. Others will see Alabama and Georgia. Our friend Gene Stallings having difficulties. 0-2 with Alabama. Georgia not off to the start that they expected. San Diego State has a pretty good team with a big quarterback, Dan McGuire. He's 6'8".
Brother of Mark McGuire, the first baseman for the Oakland Athletics.
Ken Hill can hit the ball. He's 4 out of 14. Good athlete. Ball 2 the count. Sometimes you see fellas such as this, a pitcher, have better success against a breaking ball pitcher than the guys in the regular lineup. Sometimes. Ball 3. I told you he never walks anybody. 3-0. With 2 out. Down the middle, 3-1. With 2 out here in the St. Louis third. Three and 2. Bouncing ball to Bream. He came back and got him, and that is 9 in a row. She likes it, and we'll return to Three Rivers Stadium after this word from your local station. Everybody in baseball knows this fella, Ellis Clary from Valdosta, Georgia.
What a character. There are more stories about Ellis Clary and Ellis Clary stories going around. One of which, and I guess the funniest, a very serious heart attack a few years ago. And only Ellis worried about his expense report. He said, get the mileage. He was in the ambulance. He said, get the mileage.
Get the mileage on the ambulance.
Oh, he is a beauty. Great sense of humor.
He's doing that advanced scouting for Toronto, and the Blue Jays hope to be on CBS in postseason play. The batter is Bonilla, and ball 1 to him. He walked his first time. Postseason telecasting commences on October 4th. Bonilla hits a foul, and it's 1-1. Ken Hill walked 5 in the first inning, gave up a run, forced in a run. And also delivered a wild pitch, gave up 2 hits in the second inning and got away with that. Pittsburgh has left 5. And a foul going down to the left field corner.
Ryne Sandberg leading the National League in home runs, followed by Kevin Mitchell and Darryl Strawberry, both with 35. Barry Bonds 32 and Bobby Bonilla with 31.
Some 1-2 punch for the Pirates. 1-2 the count. 2-2. If you're looking at it from a Pirate viewpoint, you say, well, this guy walked 5, made a wild pitch, gave up 2 hits, and I don't like the way this is going, even though Pittsburgh leads 1-0. If you're looking at it from their viewpoint, missing too many chances. And he fouled it to stay up there. 2-2. Nice gathering on a sunny Saturday afternoon. These two teams will play here again tomorrow. And he struck him out. Hill picks up his second strikeout.
The breaking ball, the hard slider to Bonilla gets him. You see how the bottom falls out of that pitch. It's almost a backup slider. What a hitter does with that backup slider, they see the spin on the ball. They think it's going to be inside, and the fact that it stays outside is the thing that fools them.
The batter is Bonds, and he walked his first time up. Ball 1 to him. Am I right, Tim? Here's Hill in the first inning. Threw over 30 pitches, and sometimes after you get a little bit tired, then your control might improve.
For a sinker baller, a guy who has to keep the ball down to be effective. When you look back on that first inning, Wally Backman trying to steal, actually the hit and run play with a count 2-1 to Jay Bell, that might have given Kenny Hill, that might have given him a chance to complete the inning and thereby hold the Pirates to only 1 run.
Yeah, that might have kept him in the game.
Yeah.
We're in the third now, and Pittsburgh leads it 1-0. Leadoff man has been retired. And a big night last night for this batter, Barry Bonds. Pitch is low, 2-2. He joined the 30 home run, 50 stolen base club, and he's only the second to ever do it in the big leagues.
Eric Davis, the first back in 1987. Also the first Pirate to ever hit 30-plus home runs and steal 30 bases. That's remarkable when you think about Dave Parker being here, winning the batting crown in 77, 78.
3-2 pitch and a smash for Ozzie. And he throws him out. That ball was right at his feet. He was lucky there. That's 2 out. Bonds smiling, looking out at Smith.
Tell you, a lot of ground balls have followed that yellow brick road to get to the Wizard of Oz. A Hall of Famer recognized primarily, I think, for his defense. I think Ozzie Smith will be one of the few guys to get in the Hall of Fame recognized primarily for his defense.
I would agree with you. Here's Breen, and he hits it to the Wizard. And it's the first time the Pirates have gone down in order. We have played 3 innings, 1-0 Buccaneers. Vegas. Everybody's getting married around here. The Pirate pitcher, and here's a message board. Notice, Kim, will you marry me? And there they are. I guess the answer was yes.
Tell you, I love the game of baseball, but what brings out the romance at a ballpark?
And he slipped a ring on her. Slipped a ring on her finger out there.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. You get a 1-0 game. Here, leading off for St. Louis, they've had no base runners, is Bernard Gilkey. Tomlin has set down 9 in a row, 2 of them on strikes. And he falls behind the leadoff hitter here. That proposal on the board may have shaken him. He was just married a short while ago himself. Get your concentration back now, Randy. Sid Bream, he was ready for a nasty hop off the dirt, but that's 10 in a row. Last night, the big story was Barry Bonds. Those are the flying feet of Bonds.
That proposal, I'll tell you, the people here in Pittsburgh just love Barry Bonds. Second player to reach 30 home runs and 50 stolen bases. His daddy, Bobby Bonds, was in the 30-30 club 5 different seasons. That's the most of any other player.
Here's Ozzie Smith, and there's a base hit, the first of the day for St. Louis. Is he going to try for 2? Not against Bonds. 1 out and the runner on. Tomlin had set down 9 in a row. 10 in a row, and then the hit by Ozzie. He's at first, being held by Sid Bream. And Felix Jose is up. This fella is big and strong, and he is tough. One of his teammates from the Dominican told me he gets in a fight every day in the Dominican Republic. He loves to duke it out. Look at the arms on him. He is big. 1 on, 1 out. Missed the breaking ball. We're in the 4th, 1-0 Pittsburgh.
Some segue. In 1/2 inning, we've gone from marriage proposals to fights.
They go together. We're in the 4th, 1-0. And the pitch is inside, 1-1. Felix was with Oakland at the start of the season. He didn't mind leaving there, despite their championship tendencies this year. He said he wants to play every day, which he wasn't doing at Oakland, but he will do in St. Louis. They've got him picked off, and Breen throws to lead. Smith had stolen 31 bases.
Sid Bream made that play work. The first base position made much easier for a left-handed throwing first baseman. Look at Bream, how he gets in a position to throw the ball on a strike, gets Ozzie Smith. Bream moving toward the pitcher and throws a strike to Chico Lane covering.
A comparable play hurt Montreal last night on a bad throw by Galarraga, and it cost them a run against Philadelphia. And the Phils eventually won that game.
Won it in 12.
That ball is foul. With 2 out and the base is empty.
Prior to that, Montreal, Buck Rogers and his crew. We mentioned managers of the year. Certainly Buck Rogers could be considered a manager of the year with the job that he has done for the Expos.
Leland says he's not nervous, but he's down to the quick there.
But before that, Montreal had won 6 in a row, 3 against Pittsburgh last weekend, and then 3 against the New York Mets at Shea.
Lean gets a piece of it. Yeah, you have to admire Rogers and that club up there, what they've done. They're still in it.
5 different pitchers have won their first major league games for that ball club this year. They have 14 rookies on their roster right now. 14.
1 ball, 2 strikes, and a chopper up the middle, and the shortstop got it. Second hit of the inning for St. Louis. Excellent endeavor by the shortstop, Jay Bell. Felix Jose gets an infield hit.
I was interested in reading a quote by Bertie Tebbetts this last weekend. He's been a player and a manager and a coach and a scout now. talking about how Jay Bell is the last piece of the puzzle for the Pirates. They didn't think that when they got him, but he has turned into a very fine shortstop. Very steady.
And prior to that, they had a list of shortstops a mile long who were trying to solidify this club. Well, here's Guerrero with 2 out. And he reaches for one and hits it to lead. That takes care of that. No runs, 2 hits, 1 left. Bottom of the 4th, 1-0 Pittsburgh. Mike LaValliere lined out to second with the bases loaded in the 1st inning. Pittsburgh has left 5. This pitcher, Ken Hill, has retired the last 5. And the Pirates lead 1-0 here in the 4th. And a foul to get things underway. It'll be the bottom 3 in the order. LaValliere with the whiskers. He was clean shaven a while ago, and then LaValliere went into a slump. So he grew the beard. And in addition, he said his little 4-year-old daughter likes that beard, Tim.
His 4-year-old Kristen likes the beard. I'll tell you, when you're a catcher and you have that mask on all the time, a beard's not a bad idea.
Did you ever grow one?
Yeah, absolutely.
LaValliere with a late swing and a foul, and it's 1-2. LaValliere leaned, and the pitcher, Tomlin. LaValliere 2-2. Almost went for that one. This pitcher has walked 5 and struck out 2 and allowed 2 hits. And ball 3.
Jeff King, the 3rd baseman for the Pirates, also had a beard. A fan sent him 2 razors in a package and said, get the idea. He's very sensitive about it. He shaved it off.
Really?
Some people don't like beards.
And a fly ball into right for Felix Jose, and he makes the catch. The only 20-game winner in the National League is Doug Drabek. I asked him if he ever heard of Cy Young.
Yeah, I've heard of him a few times. But right now, I'm not going to think about him till after the season. Right now, I think what's helped is that we've been in the pennant race the whole year, and I think all the concentration has been towards that.
Batter is leaned. He singled his first time up, and he takes ball 1 high. There's Drabek on the bench, 20-6, and a lot of big victories for him.
The last time a team had both the MVP and the Cy Young Award winner back in 1988 when Hershiser and Gibson won it for the Dodgers, the world champion Dodgers. And of course the Pirates hoping that the same thing applies this year.
We get a weather report from Yankee Stadium. It is still raining there where the Red Sox hope to play. It hasn't been called off yet. And we'll keep you right here with the Cardinals and the Pirates. 1 ball, 2 strikes the count to leaned. That's leaned Chico. He was on a tear here the last time we were in Pittsburgh. He was hitting over 300. Captured the fancy of all these fans and chased a bad ball, and Ken Hill gets his 3rd strikeout.
There is talk about Leaned needing to be rested more often, but there are no rest for guys the last 10 days of the season, the last 2 weeks. He's got to gut it out. When he is rested, Wally Backman spells Leaned at second base, and King moves to 3rd.
They have a good bench. They can move people around. That's 7 in a row by Ken Hill, and the pitcher is up. Sacrificed his first time. There is a strike from Hill.
Concerning the Red Sox at Yankee Stadium, I would think the Red Sox would want to play today instead of playing the Yankees a doubleheader tomorrow. Very difficult to win 2 games when you're playing a doubleheader, but it's easy to lose 2. Someone said that once, and it really makes a lot of sense. A lot of times in a doubleheader, if you walk away with the split, then you consider yourself fortunate.
Here is a ground ball to short. Tomlin did make contact, but that's 8 in a row by Hill, and now we played 4 innings here at Three Rivers Stadium. Pittsburgh leads at 1-0.
CBS Sports presents Major League Baseball. Today's game is brought to you by Today's Chevrolet. who invite you to see why more people are winning with the heartbeat of America. Newbrin, tell Newbrin where it hurts. And by Metropolitan Life and affiliated companies. Get Met, it pays.
Tim McCarver and Jack Buck with you from Three Rivers Stadium, and we go into the 5th inning of this game with the Pirates on top 1-0. And these Pirates may have let the Cardinals hang around too long. They could have put the Cardinals and Ken Hill away early, Tim.
5 walks in the first inning, and the Pirates only had 1 run to show. They also stranded 2 runners at first and third in the second inning. Jay Bell striking out with a runner at third and 1 out.
Todd Zeile will lead it off for St. Louis. He grounded to short his first time, and he's batting against Randy Tomlin, left-hander from the state of Virginia. And that's over, but low, ball 1. This fellow, even though he pitches across his body, Tim, seems to pitch very easily, doesn't he? Nice, easy motion with his arm.
You can get an idea from that shot right there. You see, he doesn't clear his hip. That's what we were talking about earlier. He steps almost toward first base and then jerks the ball in the strike zone. It's a very deceptive move.
Fly ball to Bonds. He one-hands it for the first down.
This is what we were talking about. Now picture yourself as the hitter and watch the step right there. Now you see how he doesn't clear the hip, and he throws across his body. And Todd Zeile, that was the first pitch, and then Todd Zeile made the out on the semi-line drive to left. He is very difficult to pick up, and that's the one thing that Jim Leland was impressed with when he saw him pitch the first time in an inter-squad game this last spring.
Here is Hudler showing a bunt, taking a strike. Some of those pitchers, Tim, who throw across their body like that come up with sore arms very quickly in this game.
It's tough on the shoulder. It really is. That's why they teach pitchers to clear that front leg, open the hip, and let the lower body really help the arm in a sense. When you think of guys like Tom Seaver, Jerry Koosman, guys with great deliveries like that, they really use the lower part of their bodies to pitch. Well, not so Randy Tomlin.
He's retired the leadoff man in the 5th, and Hudler hits it foul. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Hudler fly to left his first time, and last night Zane Smith got this batter out of about the only real opportunity the Cardinals had to score in the 1-0 Zane Smith shutout, and he fanned Hudler in a key spot. Pittsburgh not very comfortable in this one, leading 1-0. You're out. Caught the corner. 3rd strikeout for the left-hander. Well, what has transpired thus far in the game? Cardinals have had 2 hits, and now there are 2 out in the 5th inning. And Ken Hill walked 5 in the first inning and forced in a run. Pittsburgh lost a runner and left 3 in that opening inning. It could have been disastrous for St. Louis, but it wasn't. Pagnozzi fanned his first time. There's a strike, and Tomlin's making it look easy. There are 2 out, and here's a line drive, and this is fair, and Pagnozzi is going to get 2 despite the throwing arm of Bonds. The ball deflected away from him. That's the 3rd St. Louis hit. And the hitting of Pagnozzi is what has sent Todd Zeile to play third base, Tim.
Todd Zeile, a rookie, making that shift, and Joe Torre wanted to see more of Pagnozzi, and he has seen enough of him, especially defensively, to think that Tom Pagnozzi could be a #1 catcher. That's why Zeile went to third, because the Cardinals don't think they're going to sign Terry Pendleton, their regular third baseman. So look for Pendleton to be somewhere else next year.
Oh, Kendo is the batter. Hit back to the pitcher his first time. 2 out. And strike 1. That ball really moved. Been a pretty good hitter with runners on base. He is driven in, however, only 17 runs.
And batting only .231 from the right side. A switch hitter, batting .272 left-handed, .231 right-handed.
Celebrating a birthday today is Vince Coleman, number 29. He has a bad knee and he's been out of the lineup for a period of time. When he's not in there, this is a different St. Louis team.
There's one guy who could opt for free agency, but from what we understand, the Cardinals will make a diligent effort to sign Coleman.
And a strike to Oquendo. Yeah, Coleman wants to stay in St. Louis. Of course, he, like most of the high caliber free agents, expects to make a lot of money next year no matter where he plays. Oquendo's RBI total is 37. He's in the hole 1 and 2. Agnazzi at second, 2 out. 2 and 2. They have a base open and the pitcher next, but the pitcher is not a bad hitter. So they'll try to get Jose. Pitcher Ken Hill will be batting next. And a foul ball past third base. Some of the fans here soaking up some sunshine, the clouds drifting by, a perfect day, and it's still raining in New York and holding up that Yankee Red Sox game. Agnazzi with a 2-out double. That's the tying run at second. Tomlin stepped off. Oquendo threw the bat at the ball and hit it to Bell. Made a good play and threw him out as Green dug it out of the dirt. Nice play on both ends. One left for St. Louis. They've left 2. Shut out last night and shut out here.
Any combination of wins and losses that adds up to 9. The Mets are out of it. To 7, the Montreal Expos are out of it. And to give you an idea about how stats can be deceiving, the Mets with the lowest batting average in the month of September. That's the lowest in the major leagues, only a .212 average. And look at the games decided by 1 or 2 runs. The Pirates 41 and 28, the Mets 31 and 39.
Here's Backman starting the 5th inning with a base hit, his second of the day. That's unusual for him to swing at the first pitch.
I think the important thing about the Mets 31 and 39 record, no team in the history of the major leagues in games decided by 1 or 2 runs with that bad a record has ever won a pennant or a division title in the NL.
So the Mets are fighting the odds. Hill checks Backman, and Bell is up there to bunt, and he bunts it foul. Cardinal pitcher had retired 8 in a row.
That's why it's deceptive. You see the Mets are leading the league in runs scored. They're leading the league in home runs. But what that proves is they win the blowout games. They can't win the close games, but the Pirates can. And that's why the Pirates are in first place. The 1- and 2-run games, they're 41 and 28 in those 69 games.
Bell ducked that pitch. Ron Darling will be pitching for New York against Jose Nunez in their game at Chicago today. Montreal goes with a rookie, Scott Anderson, against Green of Philadelphia. Phillies beat Montreal last night. Cubs beat the Mets yesterday. Leadoff hit by Backman here. 3 hits for each club, and that's a good bunt. He tags it. He gets that job done.
The 37th sacrifice bunt of the year for Jay Bell. Remember, we talked about the oddity. He has struck out 100 times. He has 37 sacrifices. An unusual number 2-hole hitter, not in the sacrifices, but in the strikeout. That, by the way, a Pittsburgh record, 37 sacrifices in 1 year.
He got a good one down that time.
Handed a note, he's a member of the 37-100 club, 37 sacks and 100 strikeouts.
But he's done a great job at shortstop, and that's
really
what they
has.
wanted primarily. Now, Hill has to pitch to Van Slyke and then Bonilla and maybe Bonds. 1-0 Pirates. And a strike to Van Slyke. He is fly to left twice. If there's a character on this Pittsburgh team, it's this fellow. He's at the plate, Andy Van Slyke. Hill working against him. But while you're doing the catching, excuse me, Pagnozzi. And a foul makes it strike 2.
Remember, we talked about how Van Slyke matches up very well against Hill. Well, he's flying out to left field his first 2 times up. This is the 3rd time through the lineup. Hill's a little tired. He's not throwing as hard. I think the deeper a pitcher faces a lineup, the better the chance of the hitter to hit him. Even though Van Slyke's in the hole 0-2, if he gets that low fastball, I think the chances of him hitting a ball hard go dramatically up. The best pitch right here is a pitch out of the strike zone.
And the ball hit to the second baseman, and good base running by Backman. 2 out.
What happens? After all of that, Van Slyke gets jammed. This high fastball. A little bit in on Andy. And he breaks the bat twice.
He broke it when he swung and then really smashed it. Now it's up to Bonilla. He has walked and fanned in this game. Against Hill, 5 out of 8. Backman at second, 2 out. And for a strike, good hard breaking pitch. Three Rivers Stadium. They've done well in their attendance. They haven't really started to fill the park yet. But they're more and more convinced that their Pirates are going to do it for the first time since 1979.
The other division leader in the National League, Cincinnati, hasn't won since 1979. The Bucks and the Reds, the only 2 teams in the National League that didn't win a division in the 1980s.
Hill gets ahead on the count to Bonilla.
Back in '79, John McNamara managed the Reds. Chuck Tanner managed the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Lumber Company to a world championship. They were trailing Baltimore 3-1, and they came back winning the last 3. '79 world champion Pirates.
Bonilla with 2 out takes a ball and a good play by Pagnozzi. Things have changed since then. McNamara and Chuck Tanner.
McNamara with Cleveland and Chuck Tanner not managing, but I suspect Chuck Tanner will be managing sometime in the next few years.
That's what they play for. There's their championship ring of '79. These fans are a little restless. They want more than a 1-run lead. And ball 3. Hill disappointed in his own pitching. Slapped at the ball. Fans clapping their hands. The organist trying to get them going, and the Pirate Parrot trying to keep things alive here. 3 hits for each club. No errors in the game. 1-0 Pittsburgh. Got it. Good sinker ball, and it gives Hill 4 strikeouts, and now Pittsburgh has left 6. They lead by 1. Well, we played 5, and right after this game, college football on CBS Sports. And most of you folks will see San Diego State against Ty Dittmer and the BYU Cougars. Others will see Alabama and Georgia on CBS. Kind of a must-win for Alabama. What about that comeback last week by BYU after their first win over Miami? So good viewing. Here's Ken Hill at the plate. Ball 1, strike 1. He grounded out his first time, and he has 4 hits this year. Tomlin's sailing along, and the pressure of this game doesn't seem to be bothering him a bit. Breaking ball puts Hill in the hole. Tomlin has struck out 3, walked none, and given up 3 hits. 1-2. Fly ball for Van Slyke. You take Van Slyke in center and Bonds in left. And there isn't a heck of a lot that drops out there. He's the best center fielder in the league, isn't he, Tim?
I think so. I don't think that's an arguable point anymore. Of course, Van Slyke with that sprained ankle back in August. Out, he missed 2 weeks, spraining that ankle going back to first base in Philadelphia. And Bobby Bonilla has made the adjustment to right field rather well, too.
He had been playing third. There's one out here in the Cardinals' 6th at Three Rivers Stadium. And a foul tip strike to Bernard Gilkey, who is 0 for 2. There's the right fielder, Bonilla. Moved from third base to right field. He thought he was doing pretty well at third base, but made the move willingly. Gilkey pops one over short. Bonds can't catch that one. That's the 4th St. Louis hit, coming with one out. Gilkey the tying run on at first with one out. And Ozzie Smith is up. Pittsburgh leading 1-0. They got a run in the first when Ken Hill walked 5 batters and forced in a run with a walk. Then the Pirates left 3. They left 2 in the next inning. So their lead is a precarious one of 1-0 here in the 6th. No other National League or American League scores to report at this time. Some of the others will be checking in a few moments. Mets will be getting underway at Wrigley Field.
Good time for a hit and run right here. The Cardinals have a very difficult time scoring unless running is involved in their score.
There goes Gilkey on a hit and run, and the play will have to be to first. Tim called it and that avoided the double play. Smith is out 6-3.
That's one of the side effects of the hit and run, is that you do stay out of the double play, but that's not the reason you put it on. You want a first and third situation with less than 2 outs, but Gilkey is in scoring position. It's funny about the Cardinals. The Pirates can generate runs with speed and power. The Cardinals, for the most part, only with speed.
Yeah, their home run total is disastrous. Here's a fellow who has hit 3 since joining the Cardinals.
Only 63 home runs for the Cardinals this year.
Tying run at second, 2 out. Cardinals had the tying run at second, 2 out in the 5th inning. Lost a runner and left a runner in the 4th. Felix Jose, the batter. Right fielder. Gilkey will score on most any kind of a hit out of the infield. He can run. He's at second, 2 out. Up the middle, and we have a tie game. Just to the left of Bell. And a 2-out hit by Felix Jose ties this game. That's what I meant earlier about these fans being restless about the Pirates letting the Cardinals stay close. Well, they were shut out last night and finally get a run here.
Jay Bell playing Jose in the hole and can't come up with this ball, and the Cardinals are on the board for the first time this weekend. They were shut out 1-0 last night and finally scored this afternoon.
And now Guerrero is up with his Dominican teammate on at first, Felix Jose. And not a very good swing. That's 0 for 2 for Guerrero, and in the hole now.
That's that hit and run again. I mean, had you played a straight up type of game, well, Ozzie Smith would have been on first base when Jose had that hit. But Joe Torre electing to put Gilkey in motion. And even though Smith didn't get a hit, Gilkey's at second base, able to score on the hit by Jose.
We've seen already in a few days at the helm that the hit and run is a favorite of Joe Torre. This pitcher, Tomlin, picked a runner off earlier. He picked Ozzie Smith up. He tried to get Felix. Won the score here in the 6th. Cardinals about hit the Pirates 5-3. And a strike dropped in there. And Torre giving the signs. Might be a straight steal. Probably not, though. Probably just decoy signs, wouldn't you guess, Tim?
Well, the count 0-2. Felix has stolen 4 bases in 7 tries. He might be running.
Fly ball into left for Bonds. Back at the track, and he has it. But St. Louis scores the tying run. Guerrero's 0 for 3. 1 run, 2 hits, 1 left. We're tied 1 apiece. We'll return to Three Rivers Stadium after this word from your local station. There's a happy fella, Eric Gregg, the umpire. He's written a book called Working the Plate. It's a good book. I've read it. And he has a lot to say. Working the plate. He weighs about 350.
He's talking about home plate.
Yeah, and the dinner plate. Here we go into the Pirates' 6th. And first up is Barry Bonds against Ken Hill. And ball 1. Bonds is walked and grounded to short.
Tell you, Eric did go to Duke University to lose weight. To his credit, Bill White, the president of the National League, suggesting that he do that. He has dropped about 80 to 100 pounds. Good for him.
Yeah, not only is he controlling his weight better, but his blood pressure was sky high.
Right.
Did he hit it good enough? It's in the gap, and it is 2-1 Pittsburgh. I think we are looking at the most valuable player in the National League when we look at Barry Bonds. That's number 33. Right after the Cardinals tie it, Bonds comes back and puts the Pirates on top. Now Sid Bream. Strike 1. One and 1 to Bream, who is 0 for 1 with a walk and a run batted in.
Let me get some air time.
No doubt that Bonds is enjoying this pennant race. You see him smiling more than he usually do. He's feeling his oats.
33 home runs, 112 RBIs, 103 runs scored now, 50 stolen bases.
That caught the corner. It looked like it was in on Bream, but Hill got the call.
13 assists as a left fielder, 2nd in the National League. I think he'll be the MVP. Tell you, Kenny Hill coming to that very volatile down and in area to left-handed hitters. There it is again.
Bream hit it foul.
Here's the home run. Watch where Pagnazzi is sitting and watch where the ball is. Pagnazzi crossing the plate with a target. And that's what Barry Bonds does. Crosses the plate. 2-1 Pittsburgh.
Now 2-2 to Bream. And a foul tip keeps him up there as it drops at Pagnazzi's feet. Barry Bonds. After he did his thing last night, stole his 50th base, they put up a telegram on the message board from his mother and father. Of course, the dad is Bobby Bonilla, congratulating him, saying how proud they were of him. I said Bonilla, I meant Bonds. And a 2-2 count on Sid Bream. That was a leadoff homer by Barry Bonds. 2-1 Pittsburgh, 6th inning. And a good pitch from Hill gives him his 5th strikeout. So after the home run, he comes back and gets Bream.
Remember, we talked earlier about the slider. Left-handers think it's going to be inside. It stays outside, as that one does. And Sid Bream, the 5th strikeout victim for Ken Hill.
Here's LaValliere. He's 0 for 2. He lined out with the bases loaded, then he flied out. And the butt. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, Mike? A one-out bunt single by LaValliere, taking advantage of Todd Zeile at third base. Boy, was he flying down the line.
Well, Zeile playing deep at third. When Eddie Stanky was the manager of the Chicago White Sox, he used to fine his third baseman when a left-hander bunted the ball for a base hit. But Todd Zeile playing deep and no chance to get the speedy LaValliere.
The thing about LaValliere is he's slower than he looks. He's there with 1 out, and Jose leaned is up. They might hit and run with the pitcher next. There's a strike. LaValliere has not stolen a base, in case you're wondering. Leaned has a single, 1 for 2. And a long look at Gene Lamont, the third base coach. The hits are even now at 5 apiece. Ooh, up and in, 1-1. Get out of there, says Hill.
Kenny Hill just protecting the outside part of the plate. That's his, and that's what you've got to do. You got to pitch inside to win in the big leagues. Gene Lamont, the third base coach, flashing signals to Mike LaValliere.
Fly ball into left, and Gilkey has it. 2 out. And with the pitcher coming up, that might be the end of this Pittsburgh rally, but they've gained the lead 2-1 here in the 6th. Two out and a runner at first. One thing that bunt single did by LaValliere, it allowed the pitcher to bat here, so even if he is retired, that means Backman leads it off in the 7th. That's important. Ball 1. This pitcher has sacrificed and grounded out. And he's 1 out of 32. Some college football scores for you. College football later today on CBS Sports. Don't be too sure that Hill won't walk the pitcher here. Ball 2. He probably will take. Took a strike, 2-1. Each team 5 hits. Pittsburgh leading 2-1. LaValliere at first, 2 out, and 2-2 the count. Hill's record for the year, 4-4. He hurt the Mets earlier this year when he came up from Louisville and beat them handily. Mets play at Chicago today. Montreal tangles with the Phillies. That's low. Now the runner LaValliere will show you his blinding speed again and leave from first with the pitch. First baseman playing behind him. There goes the runner, and a foul. Will do it again. LaValliere was halfway down to second already. There is Mike. They call him Spanky. Well, he looks like Spanky of the old Our Gang comedy.
Not with that beard, however.
No. Unless you can grow one when you're 13. Runner goes. Struck him out, and 2 strikeouts, and that's 6 in the game for Hill. 1 run, 2 hits, 1 left. Pittsburgh's left 7.
The big story for Pittsburgh this year, one of the big stories, we talked about Barry Bonds and Bonilla, but where would the Pirates be without Zane Smith? His last 2 games here at Three Rivers, he beat the Mets 1-0. He beat the Cardinals 1-0 last night. He is 3rd in the National League in earned run average, and he could be a free agent at the end of the season. And Jim Leland told me that they were certainly going to try to sign him, but if they don't, they'll get a first-round draft choice for him.
Here's Todd Zeile to lead it off. 7th inning, 2-1 Pittsburgh. Zeile, one of the few home run threats in the Cardinal lineup.
Some people thought Larry Doty, the general manager, gave too much when he gave up Scott Ruskin, a left-handed pitcher, Willie Green, minor league shortstop, and Moises Alou, an outfielder, to the Montreal Expos. But the way Smith has pitched, I don't think so. When you have a chance to win it, you got to take that chance. And the Pirates much better off with Zane Smith, as you saw.
Yeah, they'd be lost without him. 5-1 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Here is ball 2. There is Larry Doty, the gentleman with the suspenders. He's in charge of running this club. He did some poor work in the front office here earlier this season, and he lost a player to Philadelphia. Lost a couple players to him. Off the waiver list. Popped up by Zeal for Bonilla. Well, it's still raining in New York, but Pat O'Brien is very comfortable in the studio. What do you have for us, Pat?
Comfortable indeed, Jack. Thank you. Cleveland at Toronto underway now. Bottom of the first. Kelly Gruber just misses a home run. He settles for a 2-out triple, but he's stranded 90 feet from home. It is 0-0 in Toronto. Back to sunshine in Pittsburgh.
Tough for the contenders to beat the lesser clubs in the standings at this time of year. Here's Hudler with 1 out. Hudler is 0 for 2.
The 2 players that you mentioned, Jack, Wes Chamberlain and Julio Peguero, were claimed on waivers by the Philadelphia Phillies. Larry Doty thought they were revocable waivers when he put them out.
Here's the base hit by Hudler with 1 out. The 6th hit for St. Louis.
Doty thought they were revocable waivers, but the Phillies claimed them on irrevocable waivers. And that was the difference. Doty didn't know the rule. In spring training, you can put one of your 40 players out there. If somebody claims them, you can take them back. But when the season starts, if you put one of your 40 out there and they're claimed, they are the property of the organization that claimed them. And that's what happened in the Julio Peguero and Wes Chamberlain deal, and that's where Doty got in all the trouble.
I saw Chamberlain hit his first big league home run the other night. He's a big, strong, right-handed batter and quite a prospect. Now the batter with 1 out is Pagnazzi. Hudler, a good base runner. And a foul as Pagnazzi tried to go to right. That's his usual batting stroke, to the opposite field. Rich Hacker is the third base coach. And across the way, Jim Riggleman is coaching with the runner at first base. That's the tying run for St. Louis here in the 7th. Felix Jose drove in the tying run in the 6th, and then Barry Bonds came back with a home run. And another foul. Strike 2.
To wrap that story up about Larry Doty, the general manager of the Pirates, he really doesn't have an assistant. And I think with the complicated waiver rules now, almost every general manager needs an assistant to go over the contract and financial problems alone of an organization. And they are thinking about getting him one next year.
Yeah, that GM job is more difficult now than it ever has been.
Yeah, dealing with the agents instead of player evaluation. It's all the ancillary stuff that gets involved.
There goes the runner, and they have him picked off. That's the second man picked off by this left-hander Tomlin today. He got Ozzie Smith earlier, and he gets Hudler now for the 2nd out of the inning.
It's that hesitation by Randy Tomlin that nails Hudler, and that's what nailed the runner earlier. The second runner, the second Cardinal runner, picked off this afternoon. When that right foot goes in the air, he has the option of going to first or going home, and Hudler broke just a split second too soon.
Pagnazzi hits it, and Bonilla caught it. A slicing line drive, and the inning is over. No runs and 1 hit. Pittsburgh leads it here 2-1.
Randy Tomlin makes his decision to go to first base when the leg is at the apex. When it's as high as it can go, watch there. That's the decision to go to first base. And that's the thing that Hudler had to decide, and Hudler left a split second too early and is nailed at second base.
Now it's the top of the order for the Pirates, who will try to solidify their lead, which is 2-1. And there's a foul ball hit by Backman, who's been on base 3 times today. Backman was on with a walk, out stealing in the 1st, singled in the 2nd, singled in the 5th, and leading it off in the 7th. These Pirates really hurt St. Louis last year. They won 13 out of 18 from St. Louis, when the Cardinals were battling Chicago down the stretch last season. So they kept them from winning it last year. Now they're trying to win it at the expense of the Cardinals for themselves this year. And a little tap to Ken Hill. One gone. Over in the American League. Let's see how things stack up. They are smack tied. Boston rain delayed at New York and Toronto playing Cleveland. Identical records.
And Boston, the Red Sox with 8 games left remaining at home, while Toronto has 9 away and 3 against the Red Sox. The Red Sox swept the Toronto Blue Jays 4 at Fenway earlier this year after the Blue Jays had won 15 in a row over a 2-year period.
Ken Hill gets a good fastball into Jay Bell, who has walked, sacrificed, and struck out. Cardinals about hit the Pirates 6-5, and on a home run by Bonds, Pittsburgh leads it 2-1. They got their first run in the first on a bases-loaded walk, and then a home run after Felix Jose had driven in the tying run in the St. Louis 6th. 2 balls and a strike. Hill behind on the count. That one just missed outside, and Pagnozzi hesitates before he throws it back. 3-1. Hill hasn't walked anybody since the first inning when he walked 5. 3-2. With 1 out here in the 7th. This game is over. College football here on CBS Sports. San Diego State and BYU and Alabama, Georgia. Then tomorrow a big day starting at 12:30 with regard to NFL football with the NFL Today. Bell hits another foul, and it's still 3-2. In the Pirate bullpen, we have Bob Patterson. Strike on the outside corner, and that is the 7th strikeout for Ken Hill.
Gives you an idea of the movement of a Ken Hill fastball. It started outside and tailed back over the outside corner. Ken Hill has pitched very, very well since the first inning. He got off the hook, walking 5, and Cardinals trailing only by a run here in the 7th.
Andy Van Slyke is 0 for 3. That Bob Patterson you saw in the bullpen a while ago saved the day the other day up at Wrigley Field when Pittsburgh was about to blow a tough game. Here's a ground ball to the first baseman, Guerrero. Now we have played 7 innings, and the Pirates hanging on, leading 2-1. Well, now we're in the 8th inning of this game, and Pittsburgh leads it by the score of 2-1, although they have been out hit. In the National League West, Cincinnati by 3.5 over the Dodgers. There were 4 out on the defeat side. And look at the remaining schedule, Tim.
Cincinnati with 9 home games, only 3 away. Doubleheader tonight, single game against San Diego tomorrow. That means their last 9 are at home. And look at the Dodgers, 5 at home, 6 in away. So not only do they have a 3.5 game lead, but the home schedule certainly favors Cincinnati.
New third baseman is Jeff King, playing where Wally Backman had been as they solidify their defense here in the late innings. The pitcher is Randy Tomlin, and he's had 2 complete games. Oquendo leads it off. Then there will be a pinch hitter. Ball 1 to Jose. He is 0 for 3. Milt Thompson will bat for Hill. Thompson's kind of the odd man out now in the Cardinal outfield alignment. And Oquendo tried to guide that one into right. It's 1 ball, 1 strike. The new Cardinal pitcher after the pinch hitter will be the left-hander Ken Daly. He worked briefly last night. 2-1 Pittsburgh. A run in the first. The homer by Bonds in the 6th. Hit the bat as he ducked the pitch. 1-2. Oquendo leading it off here in the 8th. And Oquendo a late swing and a foul. Stays 1-2. Oquendo has very little power. He's hit one home run. What power he does have is from the right side. 2-2 the count. I'll tell you something about the Cardinals, which is incredible. On the road, after trailing after 7 innings, they're 0-34.
Wow.
They never come back to win on the road. 0-34 when trailing after 7. Rare, isn't it? 3-2 to Oquendo. Cardinal bench. Foul ball.
Not only that, on the road, they're 29-0 when they've had the lead after 7 innings. So that means they've almost played a 7-inning ball game. You could play a 7-inning game and say that's the Cardinals for the 1990 season. Or those are the Cardinals.
That's the way it's been for them. And Oquendo pops it up. Jose Lean wants this one. That's the first out in the 8th.
Talk about the Cardinals. Well, Jim Leyland, all these one-run games, the Pirates winning 1-0 last night. They lead 2-1 in the 8th. He said by the end of the season, he's going to look like Don Knotts and Telly Savalas combined. So in about 10 days, there's Jim Leyland. Don Knotts weighs 80 pounds, and Telly Savalas has no hair, right?
It's a tough season.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
And he quit smoking, stopped drinking coffee, ends up in the middle of a pennant race, but he's handling it very well. From Perrysville, Ohio. Mel Thompson's the pinch hitter, ball 1.
That, by the way, was told to a columnist here in Pittsburgh. Ron Cook had that in his column today. Jim Leyland said that he would look like Telly Savalas and Don Knotts at the end of the season.
Thompson with 1 out. Hits it to Bonilla. Back near the track. Bonilla has a go over his head, and Thompson has doubled with 1 out, the tying run. Well, maybe the Cardinals can break that string of 0-34 after trailing at the end of 7 innings.
I think it was very difficult for Bonilla to pick this ball up.
I was about to say that, Tim. He didn't get a good
No,
job.
he didn't. He started back on it, and only when he gets into the shade does he take off. He took those first 2 steps rather reluctantly going back, and then when he hit the shade, it looked like he picked the ball up better, and then it was too late. The ball short hops the fence.
They stay with Tomlin, and the batter is Gilkey. The rookie is 1 for 3. He has one of the 7 St. Louis hits, Bernard Gilkey. Ball 1. In the Pittsburgh bullpen, the left-hander is Bob Kipper, and Stan Belinda is number 50, the right-hander. But they go with Tomlin. Tying run at second, 1 out here in the 8th. 2-1 Pittsburgh. They don't play Gilkey to pull the ball at all. He's driven in 1 run in the big leagues. And the pitch is high for ball 2. LeValliere calls time. Sometimes, Tim, when a catcher wants the manager to change pitchers, does he go out there to...
No. That's the worst thing in the world, to have a manager come to the mound and ask the catcher how the pitcher's throwing. I mean, here you've spent months, weeks, or years, I guess, not in the case of Tomlin and LeValliere, he hasn't been up that long, but you're trying to build rapport with your pitcher. As you look at Janet Tomlin, looking on, obviously with concern, but you're trying to build rapport and communication with your pitcher, and a manager can tear that down by asking you on the mound if he's throwing all right. If you tell the truth and you say no, the pitcher may never forgive you.
That's right. Thompson on at second with 1 out. Pickoff play, but no throw. They're trying to keep Thompson close. He's a good base runner, a pretty good base stealer, although we don't see him steal third very often. Runner at second, tying run, 1 out here in the 8th. 2-0 to the batter. Here's a big pitch. Ball 3. And he hasn't walked anybody today, but he's 3-0 on Gilkey. They have a base open. Still raining in New York. York. That's why all you folks are watching this Pirates St. Louis game. And there's ball 4, the first walk by Tomlin on the heels of the double by Milt Thompson. Is that going to bring Leland out of there? Yep, it is. Cardinals have a switch hitter coming up next, and Ozzie Smith. And he wants the right-hander, and that's going to be Stan Belinda. He'll be the second pitcher of the day for the Pirates, who lead 2-1 here in the 8th. St. Louis has 2 on, 1 out, and Belinda coming in to pitch to Ozzie Smith. Nice hand for Tomlin. The rookie's done a good job till now. Tomlin, well, her husband is out of the game now, and she, like the rest of the Pirate fans, will be counting on the relief hurler to keep the Pirates on top here in the 8th. They've been out hit 7-5. And there's Tomlin on the bench, hoping that Stan Belinda can pick him up. And a closer look at the youngster. And there's Belinda.
Belinda with 7 saves on the year, his 53rd game. That ties Bob Patterson for the most appearances by the Bucks pitchers. And to give you an idea of how they have spread the bullpen around, they have saves from 6 different pitchers this year. One by Bob Walk, normally a starter.
Yeah, they no longer have the dominant reliever who last year was Bill Landrum. And they've used a variety of people. Well, the NFL tomorrow on CBS begins at 12:30 Eastern Time with the NFL Today. Stories about a possible trade to New Orleans for quarterback Steve Walsh of Dallas. And Leslie Visser will look at the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 0-2. And here are some of the games tomorrow on CBS. That old black and blue division, Minnesota and Chicago. Dallas travels to Washington, where it's very difficult to win. And Phoenix at New Orleans. And New Orleans is off to a stumbling start. And the second game, Atlanta at San Francisco. 49ers barely won their first game, then won handily last week. And Philadelphia 0-2 at the Rams, who are 1-1. There are the runners. Thompson, the tying run on at second base. And Gilkey is at first base. We've had some audio problems in New York, for which we apologize. Still raining in New York, where the Red Sox hope to play the Yankees. And good action and a tight game here at Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh.
The reason that Jim Leyland elected to bring Belinda in right here is he'll probably get a ground ball out of Leyland. He obviously wants his infield in double play depth. However, Jeff King at third base is in for the bunt. Possibility of a bunt by Ozzie Smith. Belinda, a ground ball pitcher.
He's been stung a couple of times lately. He's lost 4. But Leland goes with him here in a tight spot. 2 on, 1 out. Smith is 1 for 3 on the day. He's had 1 home run and driven in 50 runs this year. So he'll try to outguess the young pitcher Stan Belinda. Pirates need the double play ball desperately. Outside, that's ball 2. Belinda from Huntington, Pennsylvania, lives in State College, PA. Ozzie, a wizened veteran, looking down at Rich Hacker, the third base coach. There's a slight chance they'll start the runners. Thompson at second.
Awfully bold if you do.
Sure would be.
It would be a bold move by Joe Torre.
Gilkey at first. And Belinda got one by him. 2-1. Every once in a while, Smith will muscle up and try to drive the ball. Again, the signs from Rich Hacker. Crowd giving some support to Belinda. Pirates hanging on 2-1 here in the 8th inning. 3-1 runs the count. If Smith gets on base, Felix Jose will be the next batter for St. Louis. umpire looking over into the dugout. Now flashing the sign for the 3-1 pitch. The runners, they are going, and a swing and a foul, 3-2.
Well, if they were running 3-1, nice call, Jack. If they were running 3-1, they'll certainly be running 3-2. Ozzie Smith, one of the toughest batters in the National League to strike out. He is not going to swing through too many pitches. He has struck out only 32 times this year in almost 500 at-bats.
Let's see what Belinda does to try to keep the runners close. Lean, the second baseman, sneaking in toward the base. Runners are going again, and a foul again. Keeps it 3-2. Here's the tight spot for these Pirates, who lead the National League East. 3.5 over New York, 5.5 over Montreal.
Normally, Sid Bream, the first baseman, would be way back, but because there are runners at first and second, the potential tying run at first base, he is closer than he would normally be.
He'd like
3-2.
He'd like to make that play at second if he could.
Keep the runner at first close also.
3-2. Runners going. Swing and a ground ball to deep short. This will be close at first. Out on a dandy play by Jay Bell, the shortstop, for the second out of the inning. Great play from the hole.
The obvious advantage of sending the runners in this position, it makes a very difficult play for Jay Bell. The long throw just gets Ozzie Smith. But in the process, the Cardinals now have a runner at second and third and a chance to take the lead if Felix Jose can get a base hit.
Another visit to the mound, and it's going to be by the pitching coach, Ray Miller.
And I would imagine they're going to go right at Felix Jose. There's no thought of putting him on. You've got your main RBI man, Pedro Guerrero, on deck.
And Felix is going to talk with Pedro, because I'm sure that, well, I'm not 100% certain that Felix Jose doesn't know Belinda very much. Guerrero knows him better. There's Jim Leland. Tommy Sant is the coach next to him. So they've told Belinda how they want to come after Felix Jose. Second and third, 2 out, top of the 8th. Pirates leading the Cardinals 2-1 on the strength of the Bonds home run in the 6th inning. At third base for St. Louis with good running speed, it's Milt Thompson. And another good runner, Bernard Gilkey, on at second. And the switch hitter, Felix Jose, at the plate. Belinda to Jose. Ball 1. They still have a base open. They don't have to give in to this batter.
Yeah, but you got Guerrero on deck. I think Miller told him to go right after him. Now, his control might be bad with Jose, but I think the intent right here is if anybody's going to beat you, it's not going to be this man who leads the Cardinals in RBIs.
Jose hits a foul. This batter drove in the tying run with 2 out in the 6th inning. Gilkey singled, advanced on an infield out, and Felix Jose singled him home. The Cardinals have out-hit the Pirates 7-5. Second and third are the runners with 2 out. 1 ball, 1 strike to Jose. Belinda, the pitcher. Belinda up briefly with Pittsburgh last year. LaValliere, the catcher. 2 out, 2 on. Outside, 2-1. Crowd groaned. Felix Jose, of course, went through the pennant race with Oakland last year. 2 balls and a strike. 3-1.
The one thing a catcher doesn't want to do is give location with a runner at second base. That's because the runner at second base, even though he may not know the pitch that's coming, he can tell the hitter where the pitch is going to be. I think they're using last sign. If so, this will be a slider.
3-1. He missed outside. It is ball 4. That's only the second walk given to the Cardinals today. It loads the bases with 2 out. causes Jim Leland to stir around because now Belinda has to pitch to Pedro Guerrero. They're catching a batter who's in a slump here, Tim, but he is a dangerous hitter.
Talking to Jim Leland before the game, he said last night if Ray Lankford had gotten on base with 2 out and nobody on, Smith won the game 1-0. He was going to allow Smith to pitch to Pedro Guerrero. The reason was, he said, Belinda has a tendency to throw it right in the zone of Guerrero, and if he can get his arms outside and stretched out over the plate, he can get the good part of the bat on the ball. Leland doesn't like this matchup.
Base hit loaded, 2 out and a foul ball, strike 1. One thing about Guerrero, when you think of him, you think of power, but with men on base, he is not a stubborn hitter. He'll go the other way. In fact, that ballpark in St. Louis has made him pretty much an opposite field hitter lately. There's Torrey sweating it out, hoping to burn the Pirates here. And there's Tomlin. The win is his if Belinda does his job. Base hit loaded, 2 out, strike 1 to Guerrero. And it gets away, and here comes the tying run, and safe at home is Thompson. The ball got away from LaValliere on the pitch from Belinda, and it's a 2-2 game here in the 8th inning. Not much gets by LaValliere ordinarily.
Well, this is a slider. Catchers anticipate the breaking ball in the dirt. You could see LaValliere having a tough time with the mitt. He turned the mitt one way, and then he turned it back the other way, the proper way, but it was too late. That ball was on top of LaValliere before he could think.
Now the runners are at second and third with 2 out. And there's Tomlin. He can't win it now. They have a base open, and Belinda will continue to pitch to Guerrero. The count 1-1. Breaking ball low in the dirt again, 2-1.
That's a similar pitch. I'll tell you, if a pitch like a Belinda slider fools the hitter, it often fools the catcher, even though the catcher knows what's coming. And I think that wild pitch really fooled Mike LaValliere.
The Pirates would be thrilled to get out of this 8th inning with the score tied as it is now. Guerrero doesn't get it. 2-2.
Here's that wild pitch one more time. Now watch LaValliere. You see that hesitation in turning the mitt over? Catchers on balls that are down turn that mitt over and try to keep the ball out in front of it. That little hesitation there caused the wild pitch.
2-2 to Guerrero. Second and third, 2 out. 2-2 the score, and a foul. St. Louis 7 hits. Pittsburgh 5 hits. Toronto trailing in the 3rd inning to Cleveland. It's tough to beat those non-contenders. They are loose. They'll do a lot of running on you and everything else. And Boston still rain delayed at New York. It's still not called off at Yankee Stadium. Belinda trying to get Guerrero. There are 2 outs, second and third. Gilkey's the lead runner. Up and in, and it's 3-2. 3-2 as Guerrero will dig back in. If they lose Guerrero, they'll be facing Todd Zeile. Pirate bullpen, which we showed you a while ago, is still busy. And a hit, a walk, another walk. Now the 3rd walk of the inning is given to Guerrero. It's the 2nd by Belinda, and it loads them up. So there have been 3 walks, a hit, and a wild pitch in this inning. Out in the Pirate bullpen, Bob Kipper is still warming up, and Landrum is the right-hander. And Jim Leland's going with Belinda, and Guerrero joins the other base runners, and Torrey hopes that Zeile will do the job. Zeile has that low batting average with runners in scoring position, the lowest in the National League. Bases loaded, 2 out. Ball 1. Bernard Gilkey is at third base. And down at second base is Felix Jose. And the runner at first is Guerrero and Sid Bream. The batter Zeile. Sid Bream goes to the mound to see if he can help the young hurler. Stan Belinda. The Mets are underway in Chicago, and we'll give you scores of that game as they come in. Nothing doing in the first. Ball 1 to Zeal. Bases loaded, 2 out. 2-2 the score. Top of the 8th. Ball 2. There's no defense against the walk, Tim. This is what happened to the Cardinals in the first inning when Ken Hill walked 5 and forced in a run.
Saw that banner, "You can't touch Belinda." Well, Belinda hasn't been able to touch the plate during this inning. He got Smith on the ground ball and then walked 2 in a row with a wild pitch sandwiched in between. Now it's 2-0 to Zeal.
And you can bet he's swinging. Bases loaded, 2 out. Ball 3. What an ignominious way for the Pirates to give up the lead if they do surrender it here. There's Tomlin. The victory has slipped away from him. There's Leland, and the victory might be slipping away from him also. 3-0 to Zeal. He's not swinging, is he, Tim?
No.
There's the line score. 2-2 the score. Bases loaded, 2 out, and Belinda has to throw a strike. He did. 3-1, and now Zeal will be swinging. Pittsburgh would be tickled to get into the dugout with the score tied. Cubs just went ahead of the Mets in the first, 1-0. 3-1. Bases loaded, 2 out. Ball 4 puts St. Louis on top. That's the 3rd walk by Belinda, the 4th walk of the inning, and it's 3-2 Cardinals. The run batted in for Zeal as Gilkey dents the plate. Here comes Leland. Listen to the crowd.
I'll tell you the irony of this game. He's going to go to Bill Landrum, but Randy Tomlin, a guy who doesn't walk anybody, walked his first man, and that may have led to his defeat because he is on the losing side right now.
So that's it for Belinda, and in comes the right-hander, Bill Landrum. Stan Belinda on the bench, and he had a tough time of it today, walking 3 and forcing home a run. And the new pitcher is Bill Landrum. He has a record of 5-3 with 13 saves, inherits a bases-loaded 2-out jam. And the batter against him will be Rex Hudler. I'm half surprised the Cardinals didn't go for a pinch hitter here.
I think the reason is Hudler's batting .384 against right-handed pitching.
Bases loaded, 2 out.
A much better hitter against right-handers than he is against left-handers.
Landrum from the stretch. We have a pinch runner at second. Ball 1 way high. Dave Collins runs for Guerrero. He'll go in and play first base. He's at second. Felix Jose is at third. Zeal, who just walked, is at first. Look at those figures. .384 against right-handers for Hudler. Only .234.
Joe Torre's doing his homework.
Bases loaded, 2 out. And a bouncing foul evens the count, 1-1. In the 8th inning, Joe Torre's pitcher, whoever it is, will be facing Bonilla, Bonds, and Bream. Over at third is Felix Jose. Collins at second. At first base, it's Zeal. Cardinals have scored twice in the 8th and lead 3-2, and Ken Hill could be the winner. And Randy Tomlin could be the loser. That's the way it stands now. 1-1 to the batter. Ball 2. We've already had 4 walks in the inning, 1 hit and 1 wild pitch. Nasty frame for Pittsburgh. Now the Cubs add to their lead over the Mets. As the rookie May drives in a run. So the Pirates are losing, the Mets are losing. Montreal will play at Philly. Bases loaded, 2 out. And a bouncing ball to third, forced out by King, and the inning is over. St. Louis leads 3, and they have stranded 6, but they lead 3-2. Cardinals leading 3-2, bottom of the 8th here in Pittsburgh. Ken Daly takes over, 4-3, 1 save. Trying to save it for Ken Hill. If he can't do it, his backup in the bullpen is the big man, Lee Smith. Bill Thompson started that rally with a double, and he stays in the lineup. He's playing center field and batting 9th. And the pitcher bats in the number 6 spot, and Dave Collins, the pinch runner whom we showed you earlier, is playing first base. Coming up next on CBS Sports, live college football action. Most will see San Diego State and BYU, others Alabama and Georgia. And the leadoff man is Bobby Bonilla. He'll turn around and bat from the right side. He's 0 for 2 with a walk. This Pittsburgh team has been very good at coming from behind all year. They trail 3-2 in the 8th. Daly to Bonilla. All one. Daly, with that 4-3 record, has allowed 5 home runs. Bonilla has hit 31. That's in for a strike, 1-1. Bonilla is only 2 out of 19 against Daly during his career. That's a strike. It stayed on the inside edge. 1-2.
Better left-handed batter, better power numbers from the left side. However, as far as the home runs are concerned, 18 as a left-handed batter, 13 as a right-handed batter. So about even as far as his time at bats are concerned.
Third baseman Zeal is deep. The pitch is high and away. It's 2-2 from Daly.
I like how both managers don't guard the line, especially with a guy like Bonilla. You've got Daly throwing fastballs away. Joe Torre saying that that's one thing he learned as a broadcaster. He's changed his mind about guarding the line since he was a manager with Atlanta in the early 80s.
Get some debates on that strategic part of the game. There's ball 3. Boy, we've had some walks.
It's interesting that Jim Leland's the same way. He'll shade a third baseman or a first baseman toward the line, but they won't stay right on the line.
Ken Hill of the Cardinals walked 5, all in the first inning. Here's a 3-2 pitch. Popped it up into left. Gilkey. He fought the sun, and he was at that awkward angle to keep the sun out of his eyes, and there is 1 out. Thus far in the game. Bond's 33rd home run of the season came in the 6th inning. Then Stan Belinda walked in the go-ahead run, put the Cardinals on top 3-2 as it is now. Prior to that, Ken Hill forced in a run with a walk to give Pittsburgh their first run. Well, can Bonds do something else? Scored the winning run last night, homered here today. He's also walked. He's 1 for 2. And he's hit very well against left-handed pitching.
72 hits against left-handers, leads the majors. 17 home runs against left-handers, 2 more than against right-handers, leads the majors. 57 RBIs, leads the majors against left-handed pitching. That's for right-handed or left-handed batters. That's how good a year Bonds is having against left-handed pitching.
Daly gets a strike and misses outside. 1-1. 3-2 St. Louis. Bottom of the 8th here in Pittsburgh. Agnazzi, the catcher, wants a breaking ball. There it is. It's a foul, and it's 1-2. Well, here we are on a Saturday tonight on CBS. We start things with a couple of comedies. Premiere Saturday, first with Family Man, and then the Hogan Family, and then the 1-hour show Earth Force, and then at a new time slot, the other 1-hour show, 48 Hours. All of that on CBS after this game, and then college football. Ooh, there's a nasty pitch for Bonds to take. 2-2.
That was an ooh right there. That one just off the plate outside.
Runs the count to 2-2 with 1 out. Daly is a potential free agent with the Cardinals. He went around on a bad ball, and Bonds strikes out for the 2nd out of the inning. Plate umpire called him out. He didn't need any help from Eric Gregg.
Just a little flick through the strike zone. Watch the bat head. That's enough. He tries to bring it back, but the home plate umpire, Jerry Crawford, punches him out. Good high fastball from Ken Daly.
Well, Sid Bream is due up with 2 out, but Carmelo Martinez, a much-traveled player now, will be the pinch hitter for the left-handed hitting Bream. Carmelo joined the Pirates before September 1st, so if Pittsburgh wins it, we might see him in postseason play. And that brings Joe Torre out of the dugout. And Leland probably anticipated this. We're going to get the big man from the bullpen. Lee Smith. It'll take him about 10 minutes to walk into the game. St. Louis leading here in the bottom of the 8th, 3-2.
Pat O'Brien in New York with the story at Wrigley Field. The Mets have come back with a home run by Darryl. That's Darryl Boston with a 2-run shot off Jose Nunez. And it's all tied up in the friendly confines in the 2nd inning. Back to you guys in Pittsburgh.
Well, Darryl Boston has put the Mets into the game at Wrigley Field. Here's our score, 3-2, bottom of the 8th.
Well, Joe Torre brings in Ken Daly, the Cardinal left-hander. He forces Pittsburgh to make a move. I guess you could say one thing about the left-hander. He certainly earned his daily bread. And now Lee Smith. Torre opts for Smith, and he's his closer.
Record of 3-4, 26 saves. Daly retired 2, 1 on strikes, and we have a pinch hitter for Martinez, who was announced for Bream, and Orlando Merced is going to be the hitter for Pittsburgh with 2 out. He'll face the smoke of Lee Smith in ball 1. This batter is from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Has no home runs. And he pops it foul out of play. 1 ball, 1 strike with 2 out in the 8th.
Not only did Ken Daly retire Bobby Bonilla and Barry Bonds, but in the process, he made Jim Leland make 2 moves. Bream's out of the game. Martinez is now out of the game, and Smith will face Merced.
Merced had 9 home runs at Buffalo. Ball too high, 2-1. And 5 hits as a pinch hitter. Mike LaValliere next, but there are 2 out here in the 8th. 3-2 St. Louis. And now Smith threatens to add to the walk total in this game. There's Bill Landrum who got the final out, causing the Cardinals to leave the bases loaded in the 8th inning. He's their pitcher as of this moment for Pittsburgh. 3-1 to Merced. And Smith issued the walk. That's the 6th given to Pittsburgh today. And the Cardinals have been given 4 walks. Collins at first will hold against the runner. We're going to have a pinch runner. And it's going to be Gary Reedus. Reedus here in the 8th with a tying run. And it wouldn't be beyond him, especially against Lee Smith, to try to steal a base. He leads away with 2 out. LaValliere not a power hitter as such. And Smith steps off. Reedus has stolen 10 bases.
Yeah, but usually if you're a pinch runner, that's one of the toughest things to do, because when you come in the game, you're not loose. Where are you going to loosen up? Run into the clubhouse? Can't do anything. Pinch hitter, you can loosen up in the clubhouse, but not as a pinch runner.
And it is ball 1 to LaValliere. Well, we're coming up on 3 o'clock local time, and we're running along with this baseball game. Some of you expecting to see football. It'll occur here on CBS Sports right after this game, either Alabama and Georgia or San Diego State BYU. LaValliere today is 1 for 3. He had a bunt single. There goes the runner. It'll be tough to throw him out. He is safe. It's easy to run against Lee Smith, and Reedus did it.
Smith, a typical power pitcher. He takes a long time getting rid of the ball. He needs the high kick, for the good fastball, and Reedus, you can forget it. Look at the jump he had. He was in motion about 4.5 or 5 steps before Smith got rid of the ball, and Pagnozzi has no chance to throw out Reedus.
Now this is more of a Lavalier type game. There's Reedus at second with 2 out. Lavalier a much bigger threat to tie it now. 1-1 the count. But Smith, a tough pitcher. Good fastball and slider, and a foul, and it's 1-2. And a fellow like Smith throws the ball as hard as he does in the 90s, then gets that slider over. He can stop these hitters cold. It's the tying run for Pittsburgh at second with 2 out. They have left 7 in the game. Left the base loaded the first, 2 more runners in the second, and 7 overall. Back past the pitcher, and the play, still plenty of time, and out at first, and the inning is over. And now the Pirates have left 8, and they trail by a run after 8, 3-2.
Three to 2 Cardinal lead over the Pirates here in the top of the 9th inning. We have looked at the American League East and the American League West. Let's take a look at the division that concerns the Pirates. They're 3.5 ahead of the Mets, 5.5 in front of the Montreal Expos. Pittsburgh with 7 home games remaining after today. The only 3 they play away next weekend in St. Louis. The Mets, however, have only 3 at home against Chicago next weekend and 8 games away, including 3 here in Pittsburgh, to finish the season. And the Montreal Expos, the schedule favors them with 9 at home, and the Mets Cubs tied at 2 in the bottom of the 3rd.
Bill Landrum got the final out in the Cardinal 8th inning. Pagnozzi leads it off and fouls it. Strike 1. We're underway in the 9th. 3-2 St. Louis. Be Pagnozzi, Oquendo, and then Milt Thompson, who started that 8th inning with a pinch double. St. Louis tries to put a hurt on the Pirates. Shortstop Jay Bell off the bat of Pagnozzi, and there is 1 out here in the 9th. Pittsburgh will have Jose Leaned to lead it off in their 9th inning. Then a batter for the pitcher Landrum. Here's Oquendo. He is 0 for 4 in the game. Pittsburgh scored a run in the first on a bases loaded walk. And then a Cardinal run tied it in the 6th. New first baseman Gary Reedus, the pinch runner. He stole a base but was left on. There's one up the middle for Lean, who has that great range, plants and throws, 2 out. And Thompson will be the batter with 2 men gone. That fella has as much range as any second baseman in the game.
There are actually 2 second basemen in the National League with great range. Roberto Alomar of the San Diego Padres. I think Alomar with a little bit better arm. Lean may have better range. Well, they are outstanding second basemen.
And you consider people like Bill Doran and Oquendo and Sandberg, where the league is strong in that department. Thompson with 2 out, shows a bunt, takes a strike. We have 2 out in the top of the 9th. St. Louis has the lead, 3-2 over the first place Pirates. And the Cardinals trying to hang a loss on Pittsburgh. It's 3-2 here. Base is empty, 2 out in the top of the 9th. Thompson 1 for 1, stayed in the game after getting the double. Bounces it to Lean, and Landrum has retired 4 in a row. Pittsburgh comes to bat in their 9th. They've been out hit 7-5, and they trail 3-2. First place Pirates trail here 3-2 in the bottom of the 9th inning. Coming up next on CBS Sports, college football. And 1 of 2 games will come your way. San Diego against BYU or Alabama and Georgia. Lee Smith came on and got the final out in the 8th, and the big man will pitch to Jose Lean, who is 1 for 3, leading it off, and this Pirate audience has stayed around. They want some bottom of the 9th action. Ball 1 to Lean.
I think Chico will probably take a strike against Smith. Amazing, as big as Lee Smith is, as hard as he throws, how good his control is.
He falls behind on the count and brings in another to Lean. There's a strike, 1-1, and R.J. Reynolds will be the pinch hitter. He's one of the Pirate favorites over here and a very effective player, a switch hitter. He'll bat for Landry. Here in the 9th, 1-1 the count. 2-1. Out in center field for St. Louis, a fellow who's going to be a big part of the Cardinals in the days ahead, and the years ahead, they hope, is Ray Lankford, having replaced Thompson. He goes to left. Gilkey is out of the game. 2-1. 2-2. Lean sprays the ball around. And usually hits the ball to the opposite field. Has only 1 home run. Fouled it to stay up there. 2-2. They expect Lean to hit the ball to right field.
He hits the ball to right field anyway, but with a guy that throws as hard as Lee Smith, particularly, you have to shade him the other way. You can see center fielder Ray Lankford doing that.
Nobody on, nobody out. Bottom of the 9th. 2-2 pitch. And a base hit, I think. Yep. Tying run is on for Pittsburgh. A little clunker fell in there. And the tying run is on. And we'll see how the Pirates play it. R.J. Reynolds comes up. Well, here's a good baseball dilemma. You got a switch hitter, left-handed batter. Are you bunting? Are you going to put it up to Jeff King, who's next, and then Jay Bell?
Well, it would be King's first at bat. Remember, he came in for defense for Wally Backman, and Jay Bell's batting second. You could go one of either way right here. I think he'll be hitting.
He gives no indication of bunting and takes a strike. The runner has stolen 7 bases. Third base coach is Gene Lamont. Strike 1 on Reynolds. Tying run at first, nobody out, 9th inning. That was only the 6th Pittsburgh hit. Reynolds hasn't sacrificed all year. Good lead by the runner. Long look by Smith. He'll hold the ball till time is called by the batter. Reynolds is 1 out of 8 during his career against this pitcher, Lee Smith. And he has struck out 6 times in 8 at-bats. Lean draws a throw. This would be a tough defeat for Pittsburgh to take because they forced home the go-ahead run with a walk. On the other hand, if they can come back and win it here, Tim, there'd be no stopping them. They'd be flying high.
Certainly would be a big win. Every win's so big now with only 10 games remaining for the Pirates after today.
Throw to first and Lean to get back. Collins, the first baseman. Hitting room through the right side if R.J. Reynolds is able to pull the ball, which is tough to do ordinarily against Lee Smith, who, by the way, has allowed 3 home runs. Reynolds hits the long ball once in a while. Leadoff man is on, and he draws another throw. He's taking a long lead and forcing Smith to throw over there. Reynolds, no home runs this year, but capable of it.
Wow, 12 double plays.
And he chased a bad ball high. That's strike 2. It's easy to do against a fastball pitcher.
Smith commits too soon, and R.J. just can't hold up. Got to turn it up a notch, and sometimes when you turn it up a notch against a guy who throws as hard as Smith, it's tough to stop it when you decide the ball's out of the strike zone. 12 double plays into which he is grounded and only 208 at bats. It's a bunch.
Pagnozzi out for a brief word with Lee Smith. Smith has been signed to a contract for the coming years by the Cardinals after they acquired him from Boston. 3-2, St. Louis leading. Tying run on at first, bottom of the ninth. Nobody out. 0-2 to Reynolds. Reynolds hit 6 home runs last year, none this year. Reynolds waits as Smith is still concerned with that runner at first. And rightfully so. Lean is not a blazer, but he has stolen 7 bases. Gets a big lead. Ball 1. Even if Lean is not thinking about stealing a base, he's taking such a long lead that Smith has to pay a lot of attention to. He'll have 1 foot out of that sliding pit. Tying run at first, nobody out, and now Reynolds calls time. Batters like to do this so those pitchers don't get too comfortable out there. Now Smith wanders around. 3-2, St. Louis leading here in the bottom of the ninth. Here comes the slider, evidently. And it's popped up foul out of play.
You know, I think the Cardinals are doing something differently. I think they're using 2 for a fastball, 1 for a slider.
Because there was a fastball, right?
Yeah, that was a fastball, and I mean, it's perennial in baseball. 1's a fastball, 2's a slider, 2's a curve, 3's a slider. The wiggle has changed. And Joe Torre, a former catcher, maybe talking Tom Pagnozzi into going the other way. He put down 2 fingers. Might be pumps, too. Not the number of fingers, but the number of times the pump goes down.
Lean, the runner at first with a long lead. Nobody out. He's the tying run. Reynolds takes it high and away. 2-2. With another fastball on a 2 sign from Pagnozzi, right? Wasn't it?
Yep, another fastball.
2 balls, 2 strikes. Reynolds was backed up. 0-2. Now it's 2-2.
Another fastball.
Smith checks Lean to pitches. Swing and a hit into left center, maybe. No, it carries out and caught by Thompson. Hit it off the end of the bat. Hit it off the end of the bat, but it soared out to Milt Thompson for the first out of the inning. Looked like he had something when the ball came off the bat.
Too much hang time, and Milt Thompson, playing a shallow left field, gives himself every chance to make this catch, and he makes a rather easy play out of it. Reynolds hitting the ball off the end of the bat. Boy, Smith is throwing so hard out there. He is bringing it.
Here's the first at bat for Jeff King. He's had a fine year in the home run department with 13. Former University of Arkansas athlete. 1 on, 1 out. And he popped him up, and Pagnozzi has a play. 2 out. Well, I bet the Montreal rooters and the Met rooters like it so far. 2 out in the bottom of the ninth.
Mets still tied with the Cubs in Chicago, and Montreal playing Philadelphia later on this evening. Tom Pagnozzi, an easy play for Tom. And the Pirates are leaving it up to Jay Bell.
And the one thing Bell wants to do, he's not thinking about a home run, although he's hit 6, is to get on base to bring up Van Slyke, who is next. Lean led off with a base hit. He's still at first with the tying run. 2 out, bottom of the ninth. 3-2 St. Louis. Cardinals trying to get even against Pittsburgh for the year at 7-7. They pitch out. Bell has walked, struck out twice, sacrificed, and he has struck out 100 times this year. Ball 1 from Lee Smith. Coming next, San Diego State against BYU or Alabama and Georgia. Lean the runner. Not going, and ball high, ball 2.
Mets still tied with the Cubs, 2-2. Darrell Boston a 2-run homer to tie it in the 3rd for the Mets.
There are the standings with regard to the two teams. Pittsburgh 3.5 ahead of the Mets. Montreal only 5.5 up. Bell fouled it, trying to go to right, 2-1.
If this were any other inning, I think you could look for Lean to be running. But base runners are reluctant to run when a caught stealing would end the game. Think of it from a psychological standpoint. It's almost like all the blame is on the caught stealing. So you're less apt to take a chance when, if you're caught stealing, it'll end the ball game.
Jay Bell, the batter. Pirates down to their final out, trailing 3-2. Gave up 2 in the 8th. Runner going. Stumbled a bit. There's the throw, and the tying runs at second with 2 out. And the count 3-1 on Bell. Well, the Pirates steal the base. Another big jump. And little chance for Pagnozzi.
And he had seen a lot of pitches that Lee Smith had been throwing. He looks back. No real need to do that. On the crack of the bat, you're running anyway. Stolen base number 8 for Lean. He is yet to be caught this year.
Now it takes a little less from Jay Bell to tie it up, but it takes something from him because there are 2 out in the bottom of the 9th. 3-1 the count. Bell has driven in 45 runs this year. And 3-2 the count. Will this be the final pitch of the game? 3-2 with 2 out. Tying run at second. 3-2 St. Louis. Bottom of the 9th. Here comes the 3-2 pitch. He walked him, and it'll be up to Van Slyke. Second walk by Smith. 7th walk given to Pittsburgh today. They're at Three River Stadium. The Pirates are leading the Mets by 3.5, but trailing the Cardinals 3-2 in the bottom of the 9th. And the tying run at second base. They have the winning run at first base and 2 out. And Van Slyke, who is 0 for 4, a good fastball hitter, up against Lee Smith. And look at there, he's only 1 out of 22 against Smith.
That hit a home run coming back in 1986.
2 on, 2 out. Ball 1. This crowd hanging on every pitch, and there comes the pitching coach, Mike Rourke of the Cardinals, out to talk to his hurler. And Tim, this is the way it's going to be starting October 4th here on Baseball on CBS.
Don't know who it's going to be yet, but could be the Pittsburgh Pirates. Magic number is 9. Mets tied, Montreal later, Cincinnati, and the Dodgers. For the Dodgers, the magic number 9.
Rourke and Smith talk it over, and in the Cardinal bullpen, the Cardinals, who seldom would lift a fella like Lee Smith, have Frank DiPino starting to get loose. He pitched very well here last night, kept the Cardinals in the game. But it's Lee Smith against Andy Van Slyke, who has 17 homers, 70 RBIs, 2 on, 2 out. This is a moment made for heroes. Are you ready, Mr. Van Slyke? Tying run at second, winning run at first. Lee Smith behind on the count. There's a strike, and it's 1-1. And the Pittsburgh bench, they sweat it out in Leland. One ball, 1 strike to Van Slyke. 2 on, 2 out. Outside, ball 2, 2-1. We've seen very few, if any, complaints against the plate umpire today, Jerry Crawford. Is this one-on-one? Certainly is. Lee Smith and Andy Van Slyke. Tying run at second, winning run at first. 3-1. Lee Smith shaking his head. He's given a walk, given up a hit in this inning. And waiting, hoping that he gets to bat is Bobby Bonilla. 3-1 to Van Slyke, and he'll be swinging. 3-2 Cardinals here in the bottom of the ninth, 2-on, 2-out. 3-1 pitch. And a foul, 3-2, and Van Slyke really angry with himself for missing that one, Tim.
Well, I don't think he's angry at missing it. I think he's angry at swinging at it. This ball's high, and he goes after a bad ball. He's a good low ball hitter. He's not going to touch that ball upstairs unless it's a clunker somewhere. But he is indeed mad at himself. But I think Boyd swinging for that at that pitch. But now with the count 3-2, you got the runners running.
The runners will take off. Lean from second, Bell from first. 2 out. 3-2 the count. There they go. And a fly ball on the infield for the third baseman. Fights the sun, and St. Louis wins this game 3-2 and cuts the Pirate lead to 3 games. Hard work for Lee Smith. Our Chevrolet player of the game is Ken Hill of the Cardinals. Chevrolet will donate $1,000 in his behalf to the Special Olympics.
Almost the player of the game and the comeback player of the day. 5 walks in the first inning. He ends up getting the win.
And St. Louis has won it by the score of 3-2. Ken Hill the winner. Randy Tomlin takes the loss. Pittsburgh left 2 and they left 10. Pat O'Brien is standing by in New York, and he'll be coming away very shortly after this as Cardinals beat the Pirates 3-2.